Good afternoon. We have a quorum of members present this afternoon, and the New York City Board of Correction, March 14th, 2023, is now in session. Our first order of business is a vote on the draft minutes for the January 10th, 2023 board meeting, which board members have received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the January 10th, 23 meeting minutes? Is there a second?
I second.
Does any member have edits or comments on the minutes? There being none, all in favor of approving the January 10th, 23 minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
Hearing no objection, they are approved. At our last meeting that almost happened, I was prepared to read the statement, pretty much of the chair's vision. And so I'll take the opportunity to read that now. My statement entitled, "Humanity Continues Here." Dear New Yorkers, it is with great honor and commitment that I serve as chair of the New York City Board of Correction. I am eager to collaborate with our esteemed board members, staff, and partners as we use our collective insight and expertise to improve conditions of confinement and outcomes for persons in custody. I also will gather thoughts from incarcerated individuals, service members, families, and the public to keep the needs of all stakeholders in mind. Jail conditions are not only a reflection of our society's values, but it also has a ripple effect that extends into the community in two significant ways: through interactions with loved ones and reintegration into our communities. First, most persons in custody have loved ones in the community supporting them through their detainment. I recently read a 2019 statistic by Cornell University stating that virtually half of Americans have a family member who has been jailed or imprisoned. This unfortunate reality not only speaks to the far-reaching impact of the jail system on our country and communities, but it also reminds us that there are families doing time with their incarcerated loved ones. Most incarcerated individuals have families that correspond with them, visit with them, pray with them, and hope they are receiving humane treatment under our minimum standards. The unfortunate truth is that many detainees do not receive the minimum standard of care to which they are entitled, and they continue to have their health and safety jeopardized. In fact, loved ones often attend our public meetings or write letters to express how deeply concerned they are about the health and safety of persons in custody and to demand change. And I'll just state, I do get those calls and letters from family members seeking change. The second way jail treatment impacts our community is when persons in custody eventually return home as our neighbors. It is in our best interest for institutions to be humane and rehabilitative, ensuring incarcerated individuals are returned in optimal mental and physical health and are equipped with the skills and knowledge to serve as productive members of our communities. This begs the question, if the effect of jail conditions can have an impact on the community, then what prevents our humanity from permeating the jails? Upon being appointed chair on January 6, 2023, I dedicated the first 30 days to conducting a full assessment of the agency, touring jails, and speaking with stakeholders. I also drew upon the previous 2 months of insight gained as a board member, After completing a thorough review, I concluded that if the board is to contribute to sustainable change, then we must first develop our agency's resilience to ensure that the board has the necessary resources and capabilities to respond effectively to the changing needs of the population we serve. To that end, I propose strengthening our agency critical areas, such as board members and staff, technology, auditing and reporting, and partnerships. The Humanity Continues Here agenda is a multi-year strategy towards achieving our city charter mandate to carry out independent oversight and enact regulations that promote safer, fairer, smaller, and more humane New York City jails. The first phase of the Humanity Continue Here agenda is phase 1, cultivating agency resilience, which aims to expand monitor coverage and reporting, audit minimum standards, collaborate with agency partners on systemic issues, advance transparency and oversight, invest in the learning, development, and wellness of staff and members, amplify and incorporate the voices of incarcerated individuals and service members. Ultimately, this phase will ensure that the Board of Correction is data and results driven and prepared to pursue bold initiatives in additional phases. Phase 2, advancing compliance with minimum standards, exercising authority under the city charter to enforce compliance with minimum standards. Phase 3, measuring progress, measuring year-to-date progress in all areas of reform. I look forward to partnering with fellow board members, board staff, and stakeholders, and the citizens of this great city to humanize persons in custody, destigmatize incarceration, and normalize humane jail conditions. Thank you. Just to note, phase 1 of the Humanity Continues Here agenda will be made available on the board's website under today's meetings document. Now, at this time, I'm pleased to announce that Jasmine Georges Yella has been appointed the board's interim executive director. Jasmine has dedicated over 15 years to city service as a litigator on administrative law and regulatory matters, and in-house agency attorney in management roles, a transitional attorney representing the city in bond deals, and a legal counselor and advisor on legislative, regulatory, and policy matters. Moreover, she promoted an environment of respect and fairness while serving as a member of the Law Department's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and Women's Committee. For the past 10 months, Jasmine has served as general counsel to the board, ensuring that the board maintains the highest standards of ethical conduct and conformity with government statutes and regulations. During this time, she has demonstrated her commitment to the agency, developed strong relationships with the board members and staff, and skillfully navigated the complexities of this ever-changing corrections landscape. Jasmine, thank you for leading the agency during this transition period. The board looks forward to working with you to achieve our strategic initiatives. Thank you.
And thank you, Chair and board members, for the honor. It's very important and necessary work, and I look forward to leading the board staff, the dedicated staff, and to doing the mission-driven work of the board. And getting to that work, we'll start with the Board of Correction updates for this meeting. Yes.
Thank you. Amanda, is not with us as a chair anymore, and she should be honored for the tremendous and work that she did under incredibly difficult circumstances. She has a long history of contributing to the board as an associate executive director, and now as a director. And I think her tenure will be remembered as one of the strongest that we've ever seen. But thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King.
Okay, so I will go through what we have on the agenda today. We have a board resolution concerning the frequency of public meetings, the Department of Corrections variance requests on correspondence and packages, the Department of Correction updates on drug and contraband reduction, violence reduction, and tablet distribution, correctional health services updates on overdoses and suspected overdose trends, and the Rose M. Singer Center's PACE units. And then we have a joint update from DOC and CHS on access to medical. It's a very packed agenda, but I want to start with an announcement regarding the board's members. So the Board of Correction is pleased to introduce the board's two newest members, Dr. Rachel Bedard and Ms. Deanna Hoskins. Dr. Rachel Bedard is an internist, geriatrician, and palliative care physician. She doctors, teaches, writes, and advocates at the intersections between health, the criminal justice system, and human rights. Her clinical work is primarily with justice-involved elders, especially people who are recurrently incarcerated in the final decades of their lives. She is also a research fellow at the Institute to End Mass Incarceration, which is housed at Harvard Law School. Dr. Bedard was formerly the Senior Director of the Geriatrics and Complex Care Service at Correctional Health Services, the entity that provides health care in the city's jails, and she treated patients at Rikers during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Bedard studied history at Brown University and completed medical training at the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York and the Cambridge Health Alliance in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We are very glad to have her on board. Welcome, Dr. Bedard.
Thank you. It's an honor to have this position, and I really appreciate the responsibility that comes with it and hope to fulfill the mandate that the council has given me.
Our second new member, Ms. Deanna Hoskins, is the president and CEO of Just Leadership USA, which is dedicated to cutting the correctional population in half and empowers people most affected by incarceration to drive policy reform. Ms. Hoskins is a nationally recognized leader and dynamic public speaker who has been committed to the movement for justice, working alongside people impacted by incarceration for nearly 2 decades. She was formerly the Senior Policy Advisor over Corrections and Reentry with the Department of Justice, where she oversaw the Second Chance Act portfolio of grants, the National Reentry Resource Center, and residential substance abuse treatment programs. Ms. Hoskins holds a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Cincinnati and a bachelor's degree in social work from the College of Mount St. Joseph. She is a licensed clinical addictions counselor and is also certified as an offender workforce development specialist. Ms. Hoskins has experienced the reentry system from all perspectives, as she is herself a previously incarcerated individual who has successfully transitioned back into the community, ultimately receiving a pardon from Governor Ted Strickland. And we're very glad to have her on board as well. Welcome, Ms. Hoskins.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve. Thank you.
And now I'll move on to the board's updates on deaths. The first 2023 death of a person in custody occurred on February 4th. Mr. Marvin Pines, age 65, died following a medical emergency while in DOC custody. Mr. Pines had been in custody since August 3rd, 2022, and he was housed in the North Infirmary Command at the time of his death. Mr. Pines left behind his daughter, his girlfriend, and other loved ones, and we express our condolences to his family, his friends, and his community during this difficult time. The board is investigating Mr. Pine's death and will convene DOC and CHS together to examine the circumstances leading up to the death. We'll report our findings with recommendations to both agencies in an effort to prevent future tragedies. Board member.
Yes, we have not completed our investigation of Mr. Pine's death, but I cannot help but say that the city of New York should reconsider the capability, the capacity, and the choice to put a 65-year-old man for nonviolent offense in the New York City jails when it is placed, according to the mayor and according to me, is not safe for 65-year-old men.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cohen.
Thank you.
We will continue with the agenda. There will be appropriate time. You can turn off your mic because it's giving feedback. There will be appropriate time to address the commissioner and the department on any concerns on deaf matters. So as we proceed with the agenda.
And I'll just add that the board is and remains dedicated to fulfilling its charter authority and legal mandates to investigate all deaths and serious injuries and near deaths that occur in the department's custody for the purpose of addressing and correcting systemic issues that can lead to such events. And next, the board expresses condolences for deaths of department staff since our last meeting in January. They are Officer Alicia Paxton, Officer Leonard Barrett, retired Captain Edward Keeler, retired Officer William Clark, retired Officer Alfred Boyce, retired Captain William O'Connell, retired Officer Cheryl Delancey Murray, retired Officer Joseph Stephen Leo, retired Officer Venus Best, retired Officer Laverne Muldrow, retired Officer Clifford L. Griggs, retired Officer Claire Matthews, retired Officer Mark Thomas Bruni, retired Captain Raul Gonzalez, retired Captain Ralph Montana, retired Captain Robert Mineta, and retired Officer Keisha Nicole Scott. And we want to share our deepest condolences with the families of these deceased officers and retirees. And now on to the census update. As of March 13th, 2023, the total census of people in custody is 5,952. And just for comparison purposes, the average monthly census for January 2023, it was 5,902. And for February, it was 5,921. And broken down by facility, the census in AMKC was 1,969 as of March 13th, 2023. In Bellevue, it was 51. In EMTC, 885. GRVC, it's 818, NIC, 188, RMSC, 347, RNDC, 799, in VCBC, 722, and in West Facility, 73. And finally, regarding our upcoming reports, we have 3 reports forthcoming. The third report and recommendations on 2022 deaths in DOC custody is in its final stages and will be published soon. We'll also be publishing a second serious injury report in the near future. And we'll also be communicating with different stakeholders as we draft our report on the state of women in the jails, which, as I mentioned during our January meeting, will cover the experience of women in custody as well as women staff. And now we turn to the third item on the agenda, which is the board's proposed resolution on meeting frequency.
We'll hold 1 second while it looks like a new group is joining the board meeting. Okay, thank you. I am proposing that the board amend its bylaws to reflect a decrease from 9 annual meetings to 6. Preparing for and operating public meetings is a hefty lift for our small staff. They often spend upwards of 3 weeks each month preparing for public meetings, which significantly detracts from our ability to work with agency partners on issues impacting the lives of persons in custody. Decreasing the number of public meetings from 9 to 6 will allow more time for staff and board members to be in the jails, monitoring and auditing compliance with the board minimum standards.
Okay, so I just point people to the website. The draft resolution is available on the board's meeting webpage. And now for the record, I'll just read the text of the resolution. Resolution for board vote. Be it resolved that the Board of Correction bylaws are amended to reflect a decrease from 9 annual meetings to 6. The new language shall read as follows. Section 1, the board shall hold 6 regular bi-monthly meetings each calendar year in January, March, May, July, September, and November. In addition, the chair or a majority of the board can call such additional meetings as may be necessary to just discharge the duties of the board. Justification. The March 14, 2023 resolution provides the Board of Correction staff and board members the necessary time to execute the board's charter-driven oversight duties, engage in collaborative approaches with our agency partners and the public, and report on substantive findings. This change will help us to achieve enhanced results more efficiently. Specifically, the reduced frequency 1 reflects the board's preference for public meeting frequency prior to a 2015 amendment. 2, allows our board staff the necessary time to monitor issues, propose solutions, and work together with the department at the facility and executive levels. 3, provides board members and staff additional time to collaborate with stakeholders and incorporate feedback from persons in custody. 4, minimizes duplication in the agenda topics, helping to ensure that each meeting is efficient and productive. And so now we're going to turn to the first public comment period in this meeting on resolution. Okay, I'll call on Public Advocate Jamani Williams, who I believe is online.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. First, just congratulations to Ms. Georgiella, and I want to wish you well, look forward to working as well. Also want to lend my voice to whomever gave some remarks about Amanda Masters and the work that she did, and congratulations to the new board members as well. I just want to say, I'm going to say the testimony, it includes the resolution you just said, but it also includes some of the other things that are on that I won't be on later to talk about, if that is okay. So good afternoon, and thank you for making space for me to speak today. The Board of Correction is intended to serve in a key oversight role as public advocate, a position built on the need for oversight identified with that mission and that mandate. Today, the board is considering a number of troubling policy changes, both in the operations of the Department of Corrections, which it is charged with overseeing, and to its own operations and procedures. I want to acknowledge the backdrop of this hearing. A new announcement from the administration has pushed the timeline for the first borough-based facility in Brooklyn back to 2029. Our city has a moral and legal mandate to close Rikers by 2027, and this undercuts the timeline as well as the urgency of ending the crisis on the island. While we continue to push to expedite the closure, it is vital that we address the operations here today. And with that, I want to speak to three proposals before the board, one of which you just spoke of. First, the board is considering a variance to restrict packages as the DOC claims that changes are needed to confront the influx of fentanyl into the prison and growing number of overdoses. However, this argument is contradicted by the fact that DOC is already empowered to open every single letter to package to people in custody for the explicit purpose of seizing any weapons or drugs. Just last year, the DOI stated that the mail, and this is quote unquote, the mail and visits are not significant entry points for contraband. Furthermore, recent reports from the Department of Investigation found that officers exploit weakened security checkpoints in order to smuggle contraband. If DOC is serious about reducing harm and shifting the culture on Rikers, they should focus on known points of entry and on reducing the population of overcrowded jails through producing individuals for court appearances, rather than fixating primarily on methods which do not address the bulk of incoming contraband and contribute to the dehumanization and reduction of rights of detained individuals. Second, DOC is seeking a variance to allow the department to open and electronically deliver mail to incarcerated people rather than providing physical letters. This reduces the ability for loved ones to connect with those isolated by incarceration and has been shown to decrease the volume of correspondence. The proposed variances also represents a large-scale violation of the privacy and civil rights of people in DOC custody. Digitalization is often cited for the lack of intimacy, privacy, and connection. Not only is this distressing from a human standpoint, we've yet to see concrete evidence that incoming mail is solely responsible for the rash of overdoses. During the height of the pandemic, when visitors were not allowed on the island, drug seizures skyrocketed and were blamed on incoming mail, but the data did not support that. The drugs found via mail wouldn't account for even a third of the surge in the seizures, and it was at this point that measures aside from limits of mail and packages should have been implemented. What is clear is that generally the primary entry for drug into facilities nationwide has been staff. At this juncture, I know the commissioner has begun a pilot program at one facility to scan staff. Investigators were easily able to smuggle contraband in through cargo pants and limited security protocol for staff. One of the first moves of this new administration at DOC was to reverse a rule that was put in place to limit their usage. Former corrections officers have testified about the ease of which drugs are smuggled in using cargo pants and about the complicity of leadership in this culture. Many jurisdictions have found themselves in litigation questioning the ability to safely and securely handle mail digitalization, including the vendor chosen by the Department of Corrections. Lastly, the board is considering a change that strikes at my very ability to have input in these changes, or for the public to observe and weigh in on critical issues. This board seeks to reduce its mandate from 12 public meetings each year to 6, with 3 happening virtually, and to limit time and the number of participants for public comment. By decreasing the number of annual meetings to 6 meetings per year, this resolution would drastically impede the free-flowing exchange of current information from people incarcerated to this oversight body. Although the board suggests that this resolution is needed to achieve enhanced results more efficiently, any alleged efficiency gains would come at a great cost to incarcerated New Yorkers and the general public. Frequent open meetings give incarcerated New Yorkers and their loved ones a chance to have their voices fully heard. Also, these meetings play a critical role in educating the public, and the board itself on current issues in the New York City jails. The information relayed in these meetings, however, can only be as current as the meeting schedule allows, and if this schedule is limited, it would delay the transfer of critical life-saving information. I also oppose the board's new policy of limiting public comment to only elected officials and the first 6 people to sign up for comment period. Both measures undermine the board's oversight authority and its accountability to the public. The best way for the public to voice their concern is to testify in real time before any vote is taken. The board should allow all registered individuals to do so. To refer the general public to written comments is not an adequate substitute for the real verbal testimony. During a typical Board of Correction meeting, votes on proposed measures are taken in the very same meeting at which the measure is presented, making written testimony less impactful, if at all. Moreover, both of these proposed changes are indicative of a troubled larger trend. I want to say any one can make some sense perhaps, but all of them combined give me some great concern. The Board of Corrections seems to be moving away from a model of transparency and towards secrecy. This is troubling, as the board's purpose is to be an independent oversight body. Recently, the Department of Corrections revoked the Board of Corrections staff access to independently view Gentech, the body-worn camera system, and handheld video at any time. DOC has forbade the recording and use of such video in the board's work. That's a quote unquote. With the resistance from the Department of Corrections, the board should be applying more pressure, not less. It can't be further emphasized that limiting both the number of meetings and comments harm both the public and the board. It limits the public's trust in the board as an oversight entity and eliminates crucial knowledge base for the board. The board in its role in overseeing operations in city jails should be centered on the principles of access, transparency, and accountability. In both its guidelines and for the department and its own procedures, it must exemplify those ideas. I urge the board to reject these changes and stay true to the mission and mandate of transparency and oversight, and find some other ways to get at what you're trying to get at, both providing and being subject to it, transparency and oversight, that is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Public Advocate. List of people who signed up to speak in person and also online. And so I'm going to call on the first 3 people who signed up in person and online. And to remind, each speaker's time is limited to 3 minutes. And we'll remind you that the 3-minute is hit.
You're out of order.
Three people sign up online, not answer that.
I will ask the question, but please direct the question to me, to Jasmine, and I will address it. But you can't interrupt the process right now, okay? Now, please ask your question.
Sign up. Vote and we're in three.
Once, and I'll give you that. I do not believe that included.
Only 3 people signed up.
That's my answer.
Is it?
I just gave you my answer.
So, and I'm just going to clarify, we have 3 public comment sections. This is the first of the 3rd. And I'm going to call on the 3 people who signed up in person and also the 3 people who signed up online. So the first person.
Hello.
Yeah, Jackie.
Yeah, I just wanted to, your camera just came back on. There's been a little bit of audio visual challenge. I don't know if others who are participating in the meeting remotely have seen that, but I just wanted to make sure that you were on alert that the meeting room was off camera for a couple of minutes and it was very difficult to hear.
Okay, we'll take note of that, but also note that everything that came through with the public advocate was clear, and I don't know if it was clear on your side, but we will monitor this throughout. Thank you.
Chaplain Dr. Victoria Phillips.
Peace and it's not on? Okay. Welcome, new board members. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips, also known as Dr. V. Peace and blessings, everyone. Longtime member of the Jails Action Coalition, which was established in December 2011 as a result of the horrific conditions on the boat and in Rikers. Let me remind this board, in 2015, a detainee attempted to mail home proof of their sexual assault. Ask yourself, have you followed up on PREA before casting your vote to stop physically receiving mail? When is the first or last time your records can reflect observation or visitation to each unit ran under Commissioner Molina's watch? Is the department late on any reports? How frequently have you visited Rikers or the boat? Has your staff actually covered every unit? You all now cowardly withdraw from your enormous responsibilities at a time when the actions of the oversight board should be to distribute leadership. While in custody of New York City DOC in 2022, 19 heartbeats stopped abruptly. Instead of increasing meetings to address the ongoing public health crisis as well as how to close Rikers on time, you allow each other to fall short. Where's your moral compass? Where's your duty to be a leader? When it comes to meetings, your resolution reduces them rather than increasing them. You should all work to have meetings every 2 weeks, given the number of lives lost under your watch. You only want to get together in January, March, May, July, September, and November. Let me briefly recap the events of the other months of last year. February 27th, Mr. Youngblood, age 38. June 18th, Mr. Bradley, 28. June 20th, Annabelle, 39. June 21st, Albert, 52. August 15th, Ricardo. August 30th, Michael. October 22nd, Eric. October 31st, Garcia. December 11th, Eduardo. All of these heartbeats stopped last year in the months that your resolution suggests avoiding. Would you accept this seat? Why would you accept this seat if you weren't prepared to get stuff to make without straw? When this board now observed the daily movements of Rikers in the boat between 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday, who's responsible for oversight? Take the initiative to assume your positions of authority. How many deaths each of your silence or lack of accountability will cause? Protect your legacy. The time for displaying grace has passed. And I'll add as my final statement, Chair, being morally upright is not always rewarded, but it is essential for shepherds. I ask the Most High to guide your heart so that it makes decisions based on convictions rather than loyalty to a particular political party or person. Peace and blessings.
Thank you, Dr. V. The next person to sign up is Courtney Howell.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Courtney Caldwell, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the New York Civil Liberties Union, respectfully asking the board to reject this resolution, which would decrease the number of annual BOC meetings to just 6 per year. NYCLU has 3 fundamental concerns with the board's resolution. First, providing greater transparency through frequent and thorough meetings is needed now more than ever. New York City jails are at a pivotal moment. 2022 was the deadliest year on Rikers in nearly a decade. Violence has been increasing and drug overdoses continue to plague our city's jails. Yet despite these reprehensible problems, the Department of Correction has continuously sought to shirk oversight. This past year, the commissioner inexplicably skipped 2 board meetings. The department has repeatedly gone around the board by seeking executive orders from the mayor. And just 2 months ago, the DOC revoked the Board of Corrections access to videos. With this pushback from the DOC, the board should be applying more pressure than ever, not less. And one of the best ways to do so is by meeting frequently. Second, this resolution constitutes a drastic departure from the board's past policies and from national trends. NYCLU has done a brief data analysis, which I'd be happy to share with the board after this. The basic takeaway from our analysis is this. This board meeting only 6 times per year would be a historical anomaly. Indeed, throughout a roughly 50-year period, the Board of Correction met on average 9.31 times a year. And the number of times the board met 6 times a year or below constitutes just 1/4 of all years since 1970. Moreover, this board resolution doesn't just run counter to past policy, it runs counter to national trends. Across the country, new oversight bodies have sprung up at an astounding rate, and these boards meet with great frequency. For example, both the oversight bodies in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and the Los Angeles Jails Oversight Body holds meetings 12 times a year. Given that New York City jails are more dysfunctional than both the former and the latter, this board should certainly be meeting at least as often as their national counterparts. Finally, at present, BOC meetings are the only avenue available for meaningful public involvement with respect to New York City jails, and this board should not be limiting that. To be certain, the State Commission of Correction also has oversight authority over these jails, but the SCOC does not provide an acceptable alternative for the public to air their grievances. The SCOC has a long history of failing to fulfill its responsibilities, and even if it was an adequate body, its attention is divided between 561 facilities, of which New York City jails are just a handful. Moreover, the SCOC meetings present incredibly limited opportunities for the public to meaningfully engage with the Commission. Our last meeting included only 3 minutes and 22 seconds of content open to the public, and there was no public comment period. Ultimately, at its core, this board works for the public, and the board's resolution would significantly hinder the very public accountability it was established to create. For these reasons, NYCLU strongly urges this board to reject the public meeting frequency resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. The next speaker is Andrew Case.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Case, supervising attorney at Latino Justice Pearl Deaf. I'm here to give testimony on behalf of Latino Justice, Brooklyn Defenders, New York County Defenders, the Bronx Defenders, and the Neighborhood Defenders of Harlem. The time to sign up for the variances was full, so I signed up during this, but I am talking mainly about the variances. I promise to address the meeting resolution a little bit at the end. We oppose each of the 2 proposed variances and ask the board to reject them both. Should the board pass either or both of these variances, either with or without conditions, as a continuing variance or limited variance, we are prepared to bring legal action against the BOC and the Department of Clear Act held. Our legal arguments are set forth in the detailed letter we submitted prior to this meeting, but can be summarized as follows. Number 1, the decision to pass the variance would be arbitrary and capricious because DOC has not met the requirements set forth in BOC's rules on considering and passing a variance. BOC must be presented with, quote, compelling evidence for a variance and has been presented with none. A permanent modification to the minimum standards, secondly, is not a variance at all. It is a change in the rules and requires full rulemaking under the Citywide Administrative Procedure Act. When BOC last modified the minimum standards for packages to increase the time the DOC has to search each and every package from 48 to 72 hours, it went through the full rulemaking process. Passing a stealth rule through the variance process violates CAPA. We note that if you do reject these variances and DOC or the mayor tries to move forward through the emergency variance process or any other executive mechanism, that too would be unlawful. DOC's own mismanagement of the jails, failure to provide timely medical and emergency care, and disregard of staff systematically smuggling contraband into the island cannot serve as the basis for emergency action. A situation squarely of DOC's own making cannot meet the statutory definition of an emergency under Executive Law 24 to suspend local laws. We hope you do the right thing and reject these variances. We are prepared to challenge your decision if you vote in favor. Very briefly on the meeting's resolution, and just from myself and Latino Justice, the city charter states in section 626B that the board shall make, quote, rules to regulate its own procedures. I've looked on your website to see whether this bylaw is created by rule. Your bylaws are not on your website. I hope you have evaluated whether or not this bylaw change actually is a rule change that requires CAPA rulemaking and have been briefed on that issue. I will be reviewing that once this meeting is over. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Case. I just want to note that the board's bylaws are indeed on the website. And yes. Okay. So now I'm going to turn to our online speakers. And I'll just give some brief instructions. For those who've registered to speak via the WebEx platform, when you hear your name, please raise your hand using the hand icon below the participants list on your WebEx screen. If you don't see the participants list, click on the silhouette of a person on the menu at the bottom of your screen. And once you open the participants list, you should see the hand icon to raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, we'll unmute you and you'll be able to turn on your video. You can then begin your public comment and we'll tell you when it has been 3 minutes and we'll move to the next speaker. So the first speaker I have who signed up is Rachel Snajderman. She signed up. She's not. Okay, so we're going to move to the first.
Do you see?
Hi, I'm assuming you called my name. I'm Lauren Stevens Davidowitz. The video just cut out, but I'm assuming it's my turn to speak.
Hold on one second, Mr. Vidowitz. Could we please set the clock for our presentation? And we can hear you now. And if any point that your video goes out, we will allow the additional time for you. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So I'm Lauren Stevens Davidowitz, a staff attorney with the Prisoners' Rights Project of the Legal Aid Society. We strongly oppose the board's proposed resolution to decrease its number of annual meetings by 1/3. The mayor himself has declared Rikers Island in a state of emergency. In an executive order issued on February 24th of this year, Mayor Adams described Rikers as experiencing a rise in unrest and disorder and creating a serious risk to the necessary maintenance and delivery of sanitary conditions, access to basic services, including showers, meals, visitation, religious services, commissary and recreation, and prompt processing and intake. Based on our conversations with people incarcerated at Rikers, we can attest that the mayor's description is accurate. New Yorkers in DOC custody are living in dangerous, unsanitary, and profoundly dehumanizing conditions. As Chair Sampson keenly observed at the beginning of this meeting, the board plays a critical role in monitoring conditions in the city's jails. Board meetings are one of the few occasions where the department's officials are held publicly to account for how they treat people in their care. The board's oversight is crucial both in times of relative calm and in times of crisis. Now, a time of crisis, we cannot dramatically reduce the number of board meetings. The proposed resolution will serve to shield the department's actions from scrutiny and hinder efforts to resolve the ongoing emergency. The resolution is especially troubling in light of the department's recent attempts to obstruct the board's oversight, such as its brazen revocation of the board's independent access to video footage from inside the jails. Passage of the resolution would thus play right into the department's hands, not to mention the reality that many who have worked in government know that there is often nothing like an upcoming public hearing to spur action from agencies, including the department. Now is the time for more oversight in the jails, not less. More scrutiny, not less. More space for the public and people impacted by the department's actions, not less. We urge all board members to vote against the resolution. Thank you.
The next speaker who signed up and who's online is Daniel Gerard.
Danielle, can you hear us?
Yeah, I couldn't unmute there for a minute. I also can't seem to turn on my video, so I apologize. My name's Danielle Gerard. I'm a senior staff attorney at Children's Rights. We advocate for young adults on Rikers and are a member of the New York City Jails Action Coalition. First, regarding the public meeting frequency resolution, Children's Rights supports legal aid wholeheartedly in their description of how fewer meetings and less public testimony will gut the Board of Correction process, cutting off comments, cutting down on meetings, reducing Board of Correction access to videos. These measures smack of authoritarianism, and we hold the mayor responsible. Second, regarding the variance requests on mail and packages, what mean-spirited and small-minded variances to approve? The only lifeline incarcerated persons have in the hellhole that is Rikers is to hear from their loved ones with items they can repeatedly see and touch, especially when it comes to letters from children. On top of every other inhumane practice and indignity suffered by each incarcerated person on Rikers, for whose room and board New Yorkers pay well over $500,000 per year per person, approving these variance requests would be yet another example of cruel thoughtlessness. Third, when is the Board of Correction going to address the mayor's and DOC's stated plan not to close Rikers as the law demands, especially now since the mayor is slow-walking construction in Brooklyn? Let's remember that the Empire State Building was built in under 14 months. What is the mayor's excuse? Finally, when is the Board of Correction going to use what little oversight power it has left to demand that Rikers decarcerate below the 3,300 people the borough-based jails are designed to hold? Month after month, we advocates come before you and leave with the feeling we are hitting our heads against a brick wall. We are just lucky that brick wall is not on Rikers. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the vote of the board members.
She is here in person with the testimony prepared, and she has signed it online.
Excuse me, you are out of order. Could you, you're currently out of order.
As are you for the freedom of speech in the public. No. She could be done in less time than we are petty guys.
I'm gonna serve for everybody with domestic soil, period. Whispering, let her speak. You wasting time.
So we're going to move on to the vote process. We had spots for people who were online and spots for people who were in person. So I'll pass it to the chair to move on to the voting process.
Go ahead, black man. Tell the people of New York what they can't speak about your people that are mostly incarcerated on records in the borough. Who do you serve? Who are you overseeing?
At this time, I will ask if there's a board member to move the vote on the proposed resolution.
There is not.
Six testimonies on this. This is domestic soil. We the people.
If the public outburst continues, I will have you removed from the room. So I'm going to ask that you please restrain from the outburst.
Get stuff done.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'll ask there is a board member to move the vote on the proposed resolution. Okay, there being none, this proposal is not moved forward. And so we'll move on to the next resolution.
Okay, so we're going to move to DOC's variance requests regarding minimum standard 1-11E1I and its continuing variance requests regarding minimum standard 1-12 subdivision A. Regarding correspondence, the department is requesting that it be allowed to open all non-privileged correspondence through a vendor from an off-site location to scan the correspondence and forward it to an incarcerated recipient's tablet. The department's stated goal is to keep contraband received via mail out of the facilities. This request is a variance from minimum standard 1-11E1I, which requires that incoming mail not be opened except in the presence of the intended recipient. And regarding packages, the department is requesting that it be allowed to require that the contents of any incoming package be purchased from and mailed to the facility by a company whose ordinary business includes the sale and shipping of items. The department's stated goal is to keep contraband received via packages out of the facilities. This request is a variance from minimum standard 1-12 subdivision A, which requires that people in custody be permitted to receive packages from any person except when there is a reasonable belief that limitation is necessary to protect public safety or maintain facility order and security. And so now we're going to hear public comment from the first 3 people who signed up online. Before I call on the first 3 people who signed up, I'm going to call on Isabel Chandler, who is the representative and is speaking on behalf of Councilmember Carlina Rivera.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me? My name is Isabel Chandler. I'm delivering testimony on behalf of New York City Council member Carlina Rivera, who is not able to join us today due to being on parental leave. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony regarding the Department of Corrections request for continuing variances to change the mail system for people in custody. Under the proposed variances, all mail would have to be sent to an off-site facility to be scanned and read on tablets by people in custody, and packages would have to be sent directly from a limited list of vendors. As chair of the Committee on Criminal Justice, I strongly oppose these changes that would further strip people in DOC custody of their rights and humanity without addressing existing issues within the city's jails and place an undue burden on family members and loved ones. A city correction department investigator testified in federal court on November 29, 2021, that drugs and other contraband found on Rikers Island, quote, usually come in through corrupt officers and staff. This evidence, coupled with the Department of Investigation statement in July 2022, that mail and visits are not significant entry points for contraband, suggests that the board should reject DOC's proposals. Instead, the DOC should focus on implementing better security measures to hold their own staff accountable and ensure provision of medical care and treatment programs to help people in their custody manage chemical addiction. Given the DOC's current operations, I remain concerned about the ways in which this proposal would limit or prevent incarcerated people from receiving correspondence to which they have a right. I urge the board to deny these variance requests now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the first person in person is Marco Barrios.
Thank you for having me. My name is Marco Barrios. I'm the criminal justice advocate with the Urban Justice Center. Also monitor the discharge planning services under Brad H. I'm a veteran and formerly incarcerated. Before I present some of the photos I got about correspondence, I asked myself, if preventing drugs from coming in, why not addressing the underlying issues for having people to do drugs? The programs they have in place, I haven't seen them. And if they are, they're ineffective. During my 24 years in incarceration, I mean, I've never seen DOC, whether it's upstate or in the city, actually addressing those underlying issues, whether it's mental health, substance use disorder, or even trauma in any form. I could say for myself, during that time, my lifeline was not just the visits and the packages, but the mailing that I received, which I still kept, a few of them. One of them is going back to 2008. And every time I felt like giving up or losing my mind, I read them over and over. I smelled it because it smelled just, maybe I was imagining it, but it smelled like my daughter or my mom when they wrote me. These are lifelines for individuals. And we should be addressing the underlying issues that cause the drugs. Believe me, mail variance is not gonna stop drugs from coming in. It's definitely not. And the amount of drugs that go in through there is very little compared to what we need to do for a rehabilitation model. Before the pandemic, I was a member of the subcommittee for programming under the previous mayor task force. And we talked about rehabilitation models. One of them was having more family ties. And unfortunately, many people don't have families, but we should be talking about how they could come back out into the community where they, not only the community feeling safer, but they feeling safer. We're not addressing those issues. And that's where we have talks about public safety, where we should be concerned about public health. And not towards DOC, it should also be towards CHS. I mean, during my time of incarceration, I had PTSD when I came out of the war. Thank God I have family ties, and my faith kept me going. Been clean like 30 years. So I just hope that you think about how this really affects other individuals. I want to see drugs out of the prisons as well, but this is not going to address it, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Anna Pastoressa.
Hello, my name is Anna Pastoressa. I'm a member of Freedom Agenda, and I thank you for listening to me. My son spent 6 years on Rikers Island waiting for trial, and I visited him every weekend. It was a very stressful and long-lasting process to get to Rikers, and one of the most parts of the visit for me was to bring a package of clean clothes to him. For my son, the most important thing about the visit were seeing me, hugging me, talking to me, and also receiving a package of clean laundry each week. At the end of each visit, the visitors used to stop by a counter and receive packages of dirty laundry back from our loved ones. Many times in the dirty laundry, I would also find a drawing or artwork that my son sent home to us. That was a ritual. We did it each time we visited. And I saw many mothers, wives, sisters, and other family members doing the same thing. When I brought these packages to my son, I was able to bring him the scent of home and comfortable, warm clothes and shoes. My son was able to send a card with his drawing back home for the family. The Department of Correction always had limitations to what items to bring. Pretty much we were only allowed to bring clothes and shoes. So blocking packages means blocking clean laundry to be brought in, warm clothes for the infamous winters in Rikers Island. And blocking packages means also that the laundry cannot be taken out to wash, along with any cards or letters that incarcerated people wish to send home. All those items were regularly scanned and searched by corrections officers. Each time I arrived on Rikers, I was sniffed by canines, checked by metal detectors, and subjected to invasive hand searches. In 6 years visiting my son, I saw a lot of abuse by officers, but not by visitors who are trying to bring clean clothes and want to bring undergarments and socks to the loved one in jails. It's cold on Rikers Island in wintertime, and they don't have enough clothes. By blocking packages, you would be putting another obstacle in the way of keeping hygiene among the incarcerated people who are forced to hand wash their clothes in the showers with minimal soap, and then hang the laundry halfway clean on their bunk beds all over and around the bathrooms and in the day rooms in filthy conditions. Those clothes hang for days, drying slowly, and always smell like mildew, which is in hot months are topped by flies buzzing around. Blocking packages is only blocking detainees from living in healthy and hygienic conditions, which is already a great challenge in the filthy and decrepit facilities. Blocking U.S. postal mail is only blocking detainees from living in healthy mental conditions. Maybe the Department of Corrections believes that they can take over the U.S. Postal Service and control and dominate the detainees' federal rights to receive mail. Maybe the DOC believes that families should also be forced to purchase new clothing from Amazon or whatever vendors they allow. If they do, they clearly aren't aware or don't care that people are at Rikers mostly because their family cannot afford bail, and that families are already suffering the financial burden of sending money for commissary to supplement the minimal food that DOC provides, and in many cases also dealing with lost income from the family member who is incarcerated. I urge every member of this board to vote no on DOC proposed variance to ban mail and packages from family members. There is no reason to take new measures that only accommodate Department of Correction efforts to shift the blame from their own staff for illegal drugs entering the jail. It is very obvious that the visitors cannot enter Rikers carrying illegal drugs. It is very obvious that your new package rule is only comfortable for DOC and punishes the innocent until waiting for trial and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips.
I believe everyone has a voice on domestic soil, so I would like to yield my time to Rachel.
Thank you, Dr. V. Good afternoon, and thank you to the board for finally allowing me the chance to speak. My name is Rachel Schneiderman, and I'm a correction specialist at New York County Defender Services, where I advocate for our incarcerated clients who are currently held on Rikers Island. I am asking you today to please reject the variance proposed by the Department of Correction. These variances strip a basic human right from those in custody, the right to remain connected to their loved ones and with the outside world. The same way someone looks forward to a letter from their child, they desperately await their favorite t-shirt or sweet treat in a care package from their mother. Do not forget that these people are not dissimilar from you and I. They are human beings, and a lot of them are at the lowest points in their lives and at this moment need support more than ever. To remove access to packages from home would eliminate that connection and put an undue burden on their families. Not all families know how to shop online or have a credit card or have access to the internet. These are very real shortcomings that need to be considered when looking at this variance. This shift may seem like a simple change, but for many, me, it isn't. In regards to paper mail, the egregious privacy violations of Securus and the invaluable nature of physical mail were discussed at length in January's hearing. You have all received in-depth research, written testimonies, and letters from a host of organizations and concerned constituents on the matter. You were all sitting here on January 10th, 2023, when a man who was formerly incarcerated showed you letters that he received from his son in 1997. That was Tad Vassell. Letters he has kept for 26 years. The negative effects of this variance are well documented, but there is no data to prove that this will solve the drug problem on Rikers. The evidence that we have shows us that the bulk of drugs on Rikers are brought in by correction officers. In 2021, the Southern District of New York indicted 7 officers for smuggling contraband. In September 2022, 2 DOC officers pled to accepting bribes to smuggle and facilitate the sale of narcotics on Rikers. In November 2022, just 2 board meetings ago, a CO testified to how easy it was for him to smuggle K2 into Rikers. In January of this year, the Criminal Justice Committee of the City Council testified to receiving data from the Department of Investigation that showed a 70% increase in complaints of officers smuggling contraband in the past year. As Marco said, lots of the advocates and the board have a shared goal of ending the drug trade on Rikers Island. So you should not take points from the people who are directly benefiting from the drug trade, which are the COs and the Department of Correction. Please reject this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first online speaker is Natalie Pact.
Hello, I'm Natalie Pact, and I'm with the Prisoners' Rights Project of the Legal Aid Society. I'm here to express our strong opposition to the requested variances regarding mail and packages. They're inhumane, unnecessary, and unlikely to reduce contraband in drugs in city jails. Testimony already heard at past meetings of the board and city council make clear how disingenuous it is for DOC officials to continue targeting family mail as the source of contraband drugs in the jails. This focus ignores overwhelming evidence that staff are a significant source of the drugs. The arrest weeks ago of a 7th correctional officer after a federal investigation is the latest proof. We've all heard how contraband drugs were recovered at a much higher rate when no visitors were allowed into the jails. During that same period, mail seizures accounted for less than a third of the drugs found. I have personally spoken to several currently and formerly incarcerated persons who report staff are bringing in drugs. But the department not only refuses to take any robust measures to combat its staffing and contraband problems, but it undermines existing measures. One of Commissioner Molina's first acts was to try and reintroduce cargo pants for staff, even though they were banned after undercover investigators used their pockets to smuggle drugs and alcohol into the jails. The department undertook a successful years-long campaign to use ionizing radiation to scan incarcerated people for contraband, while glaringly refusing to do the same for staff. And metal detectors are useless when officers routinely wave their colleagues through, even when they have caused it to alarm. Commissioner Molina says that he is also protecting staff who are at serious risk if exposed to fentanyl. This is simply untrue. There is a wealth of scientific evidence that staff who touch mail and packages that have fentanyl on them face little to no risk to their health. Gloves and training are all that is needed. The bottom line is that DOC has not provided even close to sufficient evidence to support this extreme request. This department has no respect for the board or the minimum standards. They've clearly moved ahead with the contract with Securus without following the proper bidding procedures. They have kept the details of the contract from the board, but foiled documents to confirm what we all expected. Securus will use this as a cash grab, taking advantage of people in custody, using their personal information as currency, and DOC wants to let them do this indefinitely. Given DOC's inability to manage its staff and resources, how can we trust that any part of this program will run responsibly? How long before we hear that staff is withholding tablets from people in retaliation, or that there isn't enough staff to distribute them or keep them charged? How long before people are told that there's a backlog with scanning or a tech problem, or that they just have to wait even longer to see their mail? DOC has provided no legitimate justifications for these limits on mail for persons already isolated from their families and communities. It is an expensive, cruel, intrusive response that burdens incarcerated persons with no benefit except to profit the industry that markets these services.
Thank you. The next person we have online is Bianca Tylek.
We can't hear you. Are you muted?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. My name is Bianca Talik, and I'm the executive director of Worthrise, is a New York City-based organization working to end the exploitation of incarcerated people and their loved ones. I'm submitting this testimony and testifying today because we really want to urge the board to vote against the variance to eliminate post mail and restrict packages. Inside New York City's jails and around the country, mail and packages are tangible reminders of love. They are particularly important at a time when mental health in our jails is at an all-time low and deaths are at an all-time high. Nearly half of last year's deaths and 5 out of the last 7 were caused by suicide. Eliminating mail and packages and replacing them with copies or commercial products rips the heart out of both and will make things worse, not better. The DOC is villainizing families and children as drug traffickers and their letters and care packages as drug carriers to justify the use of the costly services of prison vendors. But the DOC has provided no data to support a widespread issue with contraband entering our jails through mail or packages. A number out of context, along with a few provocative anecdotes, does not illustrate a systemic issue that would warrant a universal change of this magnitude and one that will cause so much harm. Further, separating people from those who love them is cruel and will likely have an impact opposite to the DOC's stated intention of reducing overdoses. That's because contraband drugs are not coming in primarily through failed searches of mail and packages, but rather through correctional officers and staff or with their complicity. We saw this play out during the pandemic when visits and packages were largely restricted with little impact on the introduction of contraband. Further, several states and localities have tried this same approach to curb the introduction of contraband drugs to their facilities and failed. Pennsylvania's and Missouri's DOCs have eliminated mail, and positive drug tests and overdoses went up after they did so. Finally, in 2015, I worked at Rikers Island and personally witnessed correctional officers bringing in contraband. Officers routinely set off metal detectors, and their counterparts controlling the security processes let them slide. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, and drugs do not even trigger metal detectors, making their introduction much easier and less noticeable. The recent trend to eliminate mail in prisons and jail is not about the safety of correctional officers or incarcerated people. It's about profit. The board should not acquiesce to the myths being perpetrated by the carceral industry. It is impossible to overdose from fentanyl and fentanyl analogs through accidental skin contact or by being in close proximity alone. Vendors like Securus bundle mail elimination services with other lucrative services to drive the sale of email, ebooks, games, and music, which we know are coming on the tablets that the DOC has claimed that it's going to introduce after abruptly terminating its last contract with APDS. These corporations are also interested in the data they collect from the senders who are not incarcerated when digitizing mail. According to their own marketing materials, they are building databases of information about call recipients to sell to law enforcement and their other bidders. Finally, we want to just note that this policy may also violate federal PREA standards that require survivors to receive their mail in a confidential manner, and will also hurt people with visual, hearing, and learning disabilities who are particularly adversely affected by scanned mail, and that legal mail, which has to be legally protected, is sometimes caught up in these scans too. That type of issue wouldn't be far-fetched since the DOC plans on relying on the same vendor that illegally recorded and handed over attorney-client calls to prosecutors for this new service. And also we want to note that there is the first ever—
I just wanted to say, you're well over your time now, so thank you. But we did allow—
California has a lawsuit on this exact practice. It just issued last week. I think you should know that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next online speaker is Stephanie Krent.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Stephanie Krent. I'm a staff attorney at the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University. I've spoken with the committee on mail already, and I wanted to speak again today to reiterate my deep concerns about the DOC's variance relating to correspondence, and in particular, the very serious constitutional implications. As Bianca just mentioned, last week, the Knight Institute, along with the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Social Justice Legal Foundation, filed a lawsuit against the County of San Mateo in California for using similar technology in its jails. That lawsuit raised claims under the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the California Constitution, and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. I wanted to briefly highlight those concerns so the board is fully aware of them. The first is that the use of this technology violates the freedom of expression. Although jail administrators are entitled to some deference in setting speech restrictive policies, that is not unlimited, and policies must at least be rationally related to the jail's penological interests. But there is no rational reason to eliminate an entire medium of communication, especially one as crucial to people behind bars and their families as mail. As others have repeatedly mentioned in these meetings, the DOC's stated justification relating to drugs is simply not true. There is extensive evidence that staff are primarily responsible for drugs and that mail digitization does not work to reduce drug use and drug overdoses behind bars. Additionally, there is no rational reason to introduce the sweeping new surveillance that mail technology brings. I'll speak on this a little bit more in a moment, but I'm speaking about things like keyword searches, invasive scanning of people's locations when they send email or check on the status of their mail. Given the surveillance risks, we have seen people in San Mateo County and elsewhere throughout the country stop communicating or telling their loved ones on the outside to stop communicating because of these concerns. That is extremely damaging to the re-entry interest that I know the board has and the interest in maintaining the dignity and humanity of people behind bars. The second thing I wanted to address is that this violates the freedom of privacy. Mail digitization, especially through providers like Securus, involves massive new intelligence created and collected about non-incarcerated loved ones, family members, and advocates, making it wholly unlike regular scanning and review of mail. Providers like Securus advertise the ability to store mail indefinitely, the ability to allow law enforcement officers to conduct keyword searches through databases of mail, using keywords without any sort of limitation or any sort of legal standard required. They also offer the ability to collect things like a sender's IP address, GPS location, sometimes even banking information. That is entirely new compared to the invasion of privacy, the minimal invasion of privacy that happens when someone briefly scans or monitors mail as it enters the facility. The last thing I'll say briefly is that this also substantially burdens the religious practice of people incarcerated. Many people rely on mail to be able to independently worship and pray, and to do that, they often need physical copies of religious teachings in front of them. Depriving incarcerated people of that important faith-based lifeline is going to be devastating for people behind bars, and it's a substantial burden on their religious practice. So for those three reasons, I strongly urge the board, once again, not to approve this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we're going to move on to the department's presentation on the variance request.
Good afternoon. I want to make a short presentation this afternoon in further support of our variance requests, which are designed to keep drugs, especially fentanyl, from entering our facilities. As you all know, fentanyl kills. It is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration tells us that 2 milligrams of fentanyl, which is equal to 10 to 15 grains of table salt, can be a lethal dose. A fatal drug overdose occurs in New York City every 3 hours, of which 80% are linked to fentanyl. I want to underscore the seriousness of the problem in our jails with the short PowerPoint. What you will see in the presentation are Central Operations Desk reports, also known as CODs, from last week alone. Is the PowerPoint up? The first are from our mailrooms at EMTC, the Eric M. Taylor Center. The first slide, during a routine inspection of mail, an envelope containing a discolored letter was recovered, tested positive for fentanyl. The second slide, also from the Eric M. Taylor Center mailroom. During a routine inspection of mail, 3 mail envelopes, including a 4-page letter, a 3-page letter, and another 3-page letter, were recovered. All letters rendered positive for fentanyl. As these 2 prior examples show, because the envelope is wet, or there is another revealing factor, well, sometimes we can detect that fentanyl is present in the mailroom from the letters that we receive and packages. But it's challenging given our volume of mail and the current policy which forbids us to open envelopes except in the recipient's presence means that fentanyl-soaked letters can't get through. Here are some examples from last week. Slide number 3 is at GRVC during an SRT search operation. 1 moist, discolored piece of paper was recovered inside an institutional bucket, which tested positive for fentanyl. AMKC, during a special search operation, a plastic bag containing 7 strips of ripped paper was recovered in the bathroom. Paper tested positive for fentanyl. Again, slide number 5, GRVC, during a tactical search operation, one of our canine dogs alerted its handler to 2 sheets of paper on a bed. Both those sheets tested positive for fentanyl. At GRVC, during a tactical search operation, an institutional Bible with moist pages tested positive for fentanyl. And at AMKC in slide number 7, during a special search operation, 5 sheets of paper located in a light fixture tested positive for fentanyl. As these COD reports show, fentanyl is all too prevalent in our facilities. Last year, there were 4 confirmed fentanyl deaths, and at least 2 other deaths are likely from fentanyl. Narcan has prevented other deaths, but what is needed is to keep fentanyl out, not to deal with it once it comes in. This can be too late for many. Importantly, 41 county jails in New York State, 41 out of the 62 counties, have procedures in place so that original mail is not distributed to persons in custody. I repeat, 41 counties do what we are proposing doing, and all of them do it to prevent fentanyl deaths. New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision also photocopies. It does not distribute original letters. It reports that in 2022, its use of Narcan decreased significantly and attributes the decrease to its photocopying policy. The State Commission on Correction, also known as SCOC, has approved variances to allow the 41 counties to implement their policies. It has also granted us a variance to digitize mail identical to what we seek from you today. I am not so naive as to believe that mail and packages are the only way that fentanyl enters our facilities. We are trying to close off the other avenues. Body scanning of all individuals entering RNDC began yesterday, and it will be expanded to other facilities. We have trained our canine dogs to detect fentanyl. They have been imprinted now to detect fentanyl, and more dogs are being sent for imprinting. We are also conducting vehicle checks entering Rikers Island and the Vernon C. Bain Center, also known as the Boat, for inspection in the Bronx. But if we do not change our mail and package policy, we are leaving a prime avenue open and fentanyl will inevitably get in. I know that some of you believe that it is important that incarcerated individuals should receive original mail and packages from anyone sending them, but it is more important that we keep individuals alive. This is my responsibility as commissioner. I urge you to grant the variances so that we can join the 41 counties and the New York State Department of Correction and Community Supervision in implementing a policy that makes abundant sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. To the board members, do any members have questions for the department and the commissioner? Board Member Cohen, turn on your mic, please.
Thank you for your comments. One element there are two questions. One element of this discussion shows that you are able to find fentanyl when it's sent in mail-in packages. Do you have any reason to think that there is fentanyl in mail-in packages that is not getting through your systems? You haven't showed us anything. We've showed if fentanyl is in the jails, it can come in through officers. That's one. What is the false negative rate of getting fentanyl past your original scanning right now?
So what we
scanning. Okay.
So just I'll answer this. So we had 133 instances out of the 500 or so instances where we have interdicted contraband narcotics coming in through the mail. 107 of those were through mail itself, letter mail, and 27 were through packages. And those we successfully interdicted. But the volume of mail, which can be anywhere from 250,000 letters to 300,000 letters a year, means that sometimes those letters are going to get through.
You're not inspecting every letter?
We don't have the bandwidth to inspect every single letter. We're talking about 250 to 300,000 letters a year. Now, if we see through observation of the discoloration of a letter that indicates that it might be have fentanyl or some other contraband in it, then we have canine dogs that we have inspect that. We have test strips that we can use to test that. But we're talking about being able to do that for upwards of 250,000 to 300,000 letters a year. That's not possible.
Out of the 250,000, how many do you inspect?
Sorry, what's that?
You're saying you're not inspecting all of them. Of the 250,000 that you mentioned, how many are you inspecting?
I'd have to find another way to quantify for you. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. I can tell you that in 2022, we had over 500 instances in which some indication that the mail was impacted with narcotics. So there's at least 500 instances where we were successful in interdicting.
Right. No, it seems to me that fentanyl strips and dogs and observation are a very effective way of interdicting drugs, which you already do. We'll make comments. I'll make comments in terms of the. Could you please describe? You've changed your position in the right direction, as far as I'm concerned, about understanding that there is substantial transport of drugs into jails by your staff. Originally, you said it doesn't happen, and
I never said that.
Almost never happens, and it's not. Now you are beginning this week, or supposedly yesterday, scanning officers. Could you describe how many officers will be scanned each day?
So let me correct the record, because I never said, and I didn't. My position has not changed. I have always publicly stated there are a number of avenues in which contraband narcotics can come in. Sometimes that's through the mail. Sometimes that's by persons entering our facilities, whether they be visitors, staff, or contract workers. What I said was this belief that the majority of drugs coming in through staff is just not borne out. From 2019 to 2022 alone, there were almost 1,500 allegations of contraband narcotics coming in through staff. But from 2017 to the present, only about 25 staff members have been arrested for bringing in contraband narcotics. So that is not a majority of people compared to the over 500 incidences in which we've had contraband narcotics coming in through the mail or through packages.
Yes, if you believe that the fact that there have only been 25 prosecutions suggests anything about the amount of drugs that are being transported.
What it suggests is that nothing was done about it since 2019, Dr. Cohen. That's what it suggests. And it's been this administration that not only is proposing the scanning of mail to mitigate against that, but also ensuring that vehicles are checked of persons driving onto Rikers Island, as well as, for the first time, the body scanning of staff, starting at the Robert N. Davern Center and expanding that capability to do so. We're also dealing with infrastructure that's very old, so we have to think about just how do we have the flow of traffic and move things like locker rooms so that a person doesn't go through access control after being checked and then go to a locker room.
Are you going to be scanning every officer who comes into RNDC?
So what we're doing at RNDC is we are randomizing. We have a randomizer similar and alike to the airport that changes and selects someone to be body scanned for the day so that we can measure how the body scan of people being scanned into the facility impacts our day-to-day operations.
And how many is that going to be?
I will not disclose that because I think it's sensitive law enforcement information, and I won't disclose what the randomization percentage is.
Okay, at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll call on Board Member Dr. Bedard for questions. Could you please turn up your mic, Dr. Coon?
Sure.
Hi, Commissioner
Hello.
Molina. How are you?
Shit, thanks.
Can you speak, the variance that's before us is being, one, proposed as a variance and two, sort of loosely framed as a pilot, but I haven't seen a meaningful evaluation plan for how you all would determine that this was a success. And because it's being rolled out across the system, you don't have a control group to compare this intervention with, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to evaluate whether this succeeds or fails? And if there are measures that it doesn't hit, is the department making a commitment that it will end the pilot?
So I apologize if it was framed in the way that it was a pilot. This is not a pilot. We're just starting at the Robert and Danvern Center, and it will be expanding to all the facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant the mail.
Oh, the mail?
Yes.
Well, I think mail alone is not going to really sort of, if we only did mail and we didn't do body scanning and we didn't do all of the other mitigation measures, I wouldn't say that mail alone would be one successor if we saw a decreases in overdoses, a decreases in Narcan use. So we would be evaluating those things. I mean, when we do our tactical search operations, which we have been continuing to do since 2022, I would hope that we would find less contraband in the facilities, whether it be fentanyl or some other type of controlled substance. So I think we would be tracking all of those things to see if we're seeing decreases of those discoveries.
But you don't have targets articulated about how much of a decrease you would need to see in order to consider this a success or a failure.
I think it's hard to just do that specifically on mail. I mean, it could be done if we only did mail and didn't do the other things, or if we only did body scanning and didn't do mail. I think it's hard to pinpoint that mail would be the only thing that made those things decrease.
I guess that gets at my point, which is, are there circumstances that you can envision at which you would decide to terminate this intervention and allow mail back to the facilities if you don't have a way by which you're going to examine whether it succeeds or fails?
I don't have an answer for that today. I mean, if we saw significant decreases from overdoses and all those things, would we feel we're at a safe place to allow a regular mail to come in? It's hard to say. It would be dependent on what replaces fentanyl as being something very, very dangerous that people are suffering from addiction would want to use.
Can I ask one more question? The mail pilot ties people's ability to get their mail to their having a working tablet, right? Do you have a sense of how many tablets at a given time are not working for people?
At any given time, we've deployed almost 5,000 tablets today to the population. We're going to have times where tablets may be down and they get replaced. Even if a tablet was down or if a person didn't want a tablet, we would have the capacity to print out those letters and give them to those individuals. So whether a tablet was down or unavailable for some reason, the individual would still be able to get the mail.
And would that apply as well if a tablet was taken away as a disciplinary measure?
We don't take the tablets away as a disciplinary measure, so that's not really relevant.
Okay, thank you.
I'll ask if any board members have any additional questions online or here in person. Okay, I see both Felipe and Jackie Sherman. So let's start with Jackie Sherman. I think I saw your hand first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's a little bit difficult. Oh, now I have a camera. I don't know where it was before, but hello, and hello, Commissioner. I can't see you, but thank you for your testimony. And the number of mail and packages that you cited as coming into Rikers Island is a huge number, and of course is incredibly daunting. And I wanted to understand, just thinking about the alternatives and alternatives to mail scanning, or digitization that might have less of an adverse impact on people in custody, how you have evaluated the department's ability to improve upon, to strengthen its processing and scanning of physical mail, specifically understand what resources are currently dedicated to that scanning of mail, and whether the department has engaged in an analysis of what resources would be necessary in order to scan all the mail that comes in, absolutely understanding that that is a huge number.
Okay, so we've done a number of things. When this administration took over, our canine could not interdict fentanyl on its own. So what would happen if a canine dog hit on something? Typically, they might have been hitting on the fact that there might have been marijuana or cocaine. We would test for that and confirm that. And then we would also test to see if it was laced with fentanyl, and we would prove that it had fentanyl. Working with the Customs and Border Protection Agency, they had successfully trained their canine dogs to be imprinted with fentanyl, which is huge for us, because what that means now is that if fentanyl is just laced on paper or some other object of clothing, our canine should be able to hit on it during an inspection. So we've done that. We've given, our mailroom, our central mailroom trailer, which all the mail comes into, as well as the mailroom staff in EMTC, we've sent out advisories to them to be on the lookout of discoloration, moistness in letters, so that they can see if there's mail there, if there is a possibility that the mail that's coming in or package is laced with fentanyl or some other contraband narcotic. So we've done that. We have had success in 2022. We've had a 26% increase in the interdiction of contraband narcotics overall, of mail-in packages that were coming in. What I will say is, out of that, for fentanyl specifically in 2022, it was a 290% increase. So, those are many of the strategies that we're doing. I mean, we now have body scanning, which started yesterday. We've done vehicle checkpoints as well to make sure contraband narcotics are not coming into our facilities. So it's a holistic approach in order to keep drugs out in general, but ensuring that fentanyl doesn't get to the vulnerable population that's in custody.
Thank you. I understand that. And I guess just to follow up on the question, you have cited in your response just now what sounds like incredibly important steps that you've taken to increase the array of tools you have available to you to scan incoming mail, especially imprinting the dogs so that they are able to detect it. What additional resources would it take in terms of dogs, in terms of staff or space or other equipment to physically scan the incoming mail? Because it sounds like your tools are really improving, and it may be a matter of making sure that you can apply the right resources to handle that tremendous volume of mail that you cited.
Yeah, so I can't quantify that from a human capital standpoint or a cost right now off the top of my head, but I think it would be significant if we were going to commit to inspecting and scanning every letter, especially which I believe within the minimum standards required to be delivered within 48 hours to those receiving them.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Sherman. Now to Board Member Felipe Franco.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Molina. Can you talk a little bit more about why aren't you pursuing the solution that is adopted in New York State? You mentioned before that in New York State, they make copies of some of the letters or documents, and they're available to be handheld by inmates. And my understanding is also that these documents are not destroyed, are kept for the inmate to eventually gather. Did you look into the New York State option besides the more technologically sophisticated one that we're looking into now?
So when I was in Westchester County, we also did photocopy mail there. It would require more staff for us to do photocopying. It would also continue to expose staff to fentanyl as well, and possibly we've had 3 staff members that were exposed to fentanyl this year, which puts staff in danger as well. So the scanning of this by a third-party provider so that it can go to the tablet not only increases the safety of staff, but it also eliminates any possibility that the drugs are coming into the mail.
I mean, is there any possibility to adopt those practices, but being done by your staff and New York City employees instead of a for-profit company?
I think it would require a significant amount of staff. I think it would be very, very inefficient. It would still expose staff to possible exposure to fentanyl, which is what we're also trying to eliminate as well.
But somehow the private for-profit company has a way of doing it. Are we looking into that?
Adapting the technology used by Securus to be able to scan all the mail and build out an IT infrastructure to do that, I think would be a huge undertaking for us to do on our own. We have obviously want to deploy technological solutions to improve efficiencies to our current operations. And we're doing things like that, like moving to digital scheduling and those things. But I think to undertake the project of scanning upwards to 250 to 300,000 letters a year would be a big lift for us to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hoskins.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. I guess I'm kind of confused, and I want some clarity on why this particular vendor was chosen to send mail somewhere else to be scanned and then back to the individual versus the thoughts of even utilizing an email system for family members to actually send mail that actually becomes instant response back and forth and then doesn't rely on tablets. It could be a kiosk that falls on the department to maintain and keep up.
Well, the Securus vendor was not chosen specifically because of the mail issue. That became sort of a secondary sort of opportunity for us, in which we asked their capability to do that, included with the changing of their contract so that they can deploy tablets with us. So in our initial discussions with Securus, when we wanted to move away from APDS, which quite frankly wasn't, I think, meeting the needs of our population, and we selected Securus, that's why we selected them. Then as we were seeing increases of contraband narcotics being interdicted to the mail, as individuals were experiencing overdoses from paper fentanyl that was discovered within the facilities, we began discussing how can we move to digitizing mail. And Securus actually was not the first vendor which we engaged with to think through this possibility of scanning mail. Then I was briefed that Securus could do it, and it made sense for me at that time that it was not going to add more cost to what we were asking them to do with the tablets anyway. It made the best sense to have them do it, and they had the tablet that was going to be distributed to the individuals as well. So Securus was not the first company that we discussed the scanning of mail with.
So it actually simplified it for you, but caused trauma and impact to the individuals incarcerated.
I think that is much more traumatic.
Right. I guess my question is, it feels as if we're trying to automate human contact when we're talking about humans inside a correctional facility that have yet to be convicted, but actually some of the ability to connect with their families. So my question is, what other measures to eliminate entry point were considered and move forward versus putting the blame on the people impacted in their family?
I'm not putting the blame on the people that are being impacted. I've had family members and loved ones that have experienced incarceration for many, many years, not only on Rikers Island, but in New York State facilities. And I wrote letters to them, and they wrote letters to me. So I understand the sentimentality of mail, but we are in a different place today than then. Fentanyl has killed 2/3 of 100,000 people in America, and it is deadly. And I want people to be alive. So, and I understand family members and loved ones that may feel that the withdrawal that they don't want their loved ones to go through are going to send narcotics through the mail. Sometimes they do it during visits. So I get the pull to want to do that for your loved one. But we are in an unprecedented time with fentanyl, not only in our jails, but in our communities, which have killed a lot of people, in the tens of thousands in America. And if I can prevent that from happening, I think, having your loved one come home alive is much, much better than risking having someone die because we shirked our responsibility, right, of mitigating it through the mail, mitigating it through persons that may want to bring it into our facilities, whether that's individuals that work or volunteer there or visitors. So we're trying to stop all of the rivers that is bringing contraband narcotics into the city's jail system, and we're being very aggressive about it.
Thank you. I guess I was a little confused when I read the variance because, and it says the main goal of this is to stop the entry of fentanyl and drugs into the facility. But it only addressed the one issue that impact the incarcerated people, and nobody else is uncomfortable. So I'm wondering why we're just now doing the body scans at one facility.
Okay.
This is the only city, and I've worked in jails and prisons, where people have the ability to enter a correctional facility without being scanned. I don't care if you're the administrator, the warden, the commissioner, the consultant, everyone is scanned and held accountable. And to me, implementing policies and procedures within the department first to reduce and then to be able to point that this is the only entryway that has continued to increase, I think is the best way versus moving to profiteering and automation of people's communication and people's lives. So I guess my question is, one facility just started scanning. I just want to know what other actions have been taken on the department changing their processes versus changing the processes for incarcerated.
Sure. So you bring up a good point. One, I'll first say is that we're not profiteering on the scanning. The scanning does not cost anything to the families, and it doesn't cost anything to the persons that are in custody. They can still traditionally write letters and send letters back home. Secondly, you're right. It shouldn't have took to 2023 for us to institute and evolve our policies to deal with body scanning. Quite frankly, it should have been done when we started scanning persons in custody, when we started scanning visitors, but I wasn't here then and didn't have the power to do that. But I agree, there's a lot of things that should have been done years ago that were not done. But given the decades of mismanagement that occurred, we're not going to solve this entire complex issue within the 15 months that we've been here. But I'm doing the things to solve it now. Mail is one river of bringing in contraband narcotics. Corrupt staff and contract providers that bring it is another. And sometimes it's poor family members that are coming to visit their loved ones because they can't bear to watch their loved ones suffer because they're dealing with addiction. In addition to working with our correctional health services partner to deal with other therapeutic measures to deal with substance addiction, it's a whole host of things. Now, if I could do body scanning in one fell swoop in every facility at one time, I can't do that because the infrastructure things, the footprint, the layout plan, I did not design these facilities. The same way why we don't have facilities that have air conditioning, I don't know why we would build a jail and prison without air conditioning. But this administration wasn't here when those decisions were made. So we're trying to solve all of these issues. And you're right. For me, the system has a lot of problems, but they're not a place-based problem. There are systemic failures that have existed for far too long, for 2 generations. And if we want to save the unborn from having familial incarceration, then we have to solve these issues. I don't want to see another person overdose in our city's jail system if we can prevent it.
No, thank you. You actually just gave the reason of why we need to move towards closure. Thank you.
Commissioner, I'll ask I guess, the final question before we move. Data, have you or your team provided any forecast that these methods for the variance and other methods will show the reduction in overdoses and deaths? Do you have any quantified data that these will impact?
So I mean, it hasn't been implemented yet, right? So it's hard for me to predict what that's going to look like in the future. I can say that tactical search operations, in addition to removing thousands of weapons from the jail system, we have removed over the last 15 months 1,300 contraband narcotics and narcotics paraphernalia from the system. We have increased the availability of Narcan for staff to be able to use on persons in custody. We have trained at the facility level over 4,000 uniformed staff members on the deployment and use of Narcan. So it's a whole host of strategies that we're doing to try to prevent overdoses specifically. It's hard to quantify what the mail would look like and if there will be further decreases moving into the future.
Have you looked at other systems and modeled maybe what those projections might be?
When we conferred with the New York State Department of Correction and Community Supervision, who's photocopying mail and not providing original letters to the persons in custody, they saw a significant decrease in Narcan usage, and they attribute that specifically to the mail being copied.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Board Member Ramos, I'll leave it to you if you have any questions. If not, I'm going to move on this variance. Please turn on your mic, Board Member Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to try to talk, without speaking into this line out there. But, one of the things that I was just sharing with my colleague here was that I remember when I first came here and looking at the Department of Corrections and the cesspool that I came a part of. And I've noticed the increase of eliminating a lot of the situations that contributed to the deaths, the overdoses, the movement of contraband, and I said to myself, Jesus, I would have never taken a job in this damn department here, knowing how much of a cesspool it was, and it developed in the last 20 years. And to me, life is very important. And for me to think of, let's say, a relative of mine getting busted for stealing a bicycle and coming into Rikers Island.
Excuse me, Board Member Ramos. I know you don't like speaking into the lollipop, but for recording and for online purposes, if you can please speak into the microphone. I just received notice that you're not being heard, so I apologize for interrupting. I apologize.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I was just saying that I can just think of someone who is related to me, or one of my kids from my community, because all of the kids in my community, all of the kids are there are my kids. And let's say, for instance, he or she gets busted for stealing a bicycle, and it's completely sober. And for some reason, the family doesn't have any means of paying for the bail to get this child out of the system. And they end up in Rikers Island. And he or she is sober. And all of a sudden, I find out that that child is dead because they experimented with something that they were not used to or not accustomed to because they had nothing else to do. And I believe that I have to look at that. And if there's anything that I could do to avoid losing someone that is close to me because he or she is not involved in something, because as you know, people go through different stages, and now the older you get, the later you start experimenting in your life and you start testing things, and comes into Rikers Island and all of a sudden he starts getting involved and using drugs. And either you leave here a drug addict or you leave here dead. That breaks my heart. And anything that I could do to avoid that person from leaving in a casket or being addicted to something, I'm going to go for. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last 9 months or 11 months, no, I think it's what, 9 months, Denise, or 10 months that I've been part of this correction board. Well, Doc, how many months?
Just
9.5 months. You know, I've noticed what has happened here in the department. The credible messengers that we have that come to visit Rikers Island, I'm impressed with, because they're helping them in their mental health, in going out back to the community, avoiding to use drugs. And I've noticed the scanning that is going on. I've noticed that there's been stopping people and searching to avoid contraband coming in. This did not take place last year or the year before. And if every day I read about people getting busted for bringing in drugs into Rikers Island, I've seen the type of systems that have been placed in the department in trying to avoid this. And I think we have to start looking realistically in terms of what's been going on to avoid this condition at Rikers Island, and what this administration has been doing, together with this group here that you say are not doing anything, you know, which I think is an insult. But we're here working together to try to avoid those conditions. And I think we should start looking at the things, the programs that have been placed in Rikers Island to avoid these conditions, to avoid the overdoses. By the way, that was a question that I asked Health Services, and they will be reporting on that. And what is contributing to those overdoses? And then to read more about fentanyl. I think we should start looking at that too. And stop being critical about what you think is not being done, and look at realistically at what is being done to avoid those situations. Wait a second, let me finish. Don't interrupt me.
Okay, could I?
Don't interrupt me.
I'd like to call for.
I know what's going on in Rikers Island. I have last week.
Okay.
Never mind. I've been there. And not only that, but I'm very well versed in what goes on at Rikers Island. And the fact is, but I'm also very well versed in terms of what goes out in the street.
I'm going to ask for order in the audience. If I have to say it one more time, I will have someone removed.
But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I'll take care of that. But anyway, the thing is that I have to congratulate the Department of Correction for what it has been doing to eliminate the situations that have occurred that we've been very critical on, in working in trying to eliminate the contraband coming in and the drugs that are being, regardless of whichever way it's coming in and it's being stopped. And I think you should look at it. There's a lot of you that are here that talk a lot about the Department of Correction and have never known anything about what goes on there. I've been there too, Papa. So let's look at some of this, and let's work together, okay? Because the only way, we can disagree on a lot of things, but let's work together to see how we can correct a lot of these conditions and give credit to the people that are working in that department now, that inherited a cesspool and is finally cleaning it up. Okay?
There's no cleaning it up, shut it down.
Well, listen, I agree with you. But you know something?
Board member.
Let's also think about not keeping those kids longer than they have to be in there. Let's work.
Board member Ramos.
Listen. Hold on, wait a second.
Board member Ramos.
Wait a second.
Board member Ramos.
Yes.
I'd like to point a question and not to engage with the public on the matter. The question is to the commissioner, so that the commissioner could.
What I want to say is, first of all, Commissioner, I want to congratulate the work that has been placed at Rikers Island. We read every day of everything that's going on, everything from eliminating the contraband, working with other organizations and law enforcement agencies to make sure that that doesn't come into your place. And not only that, but the programs that you're placing and putting in place is what I am concerned about. And I hope that we can continue working together to eliminate, the situations that have occurred in the last year and so far has not happened this year.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
And excuse me, could you please leave the room? No. Okay, security, could you please?
Hold it. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Board
member Ramos, please.
Can we?
No, we're not engaging that.
No, I'm not.
Board member Ramos, please, that's it. Okay, please, I'm going to ask you for the last time, the outbursts and interruptions must stop. You have your choice for voice, but it cannot be tolerated while we're trying to conduct business. Okay, yes, but you're seen and heard right now, and I'm going to say for the last time, or you will have to leave this room.
Yes, Father.
Okay, you're welcome. Commissioner, do you have any final comments or thoughts before we move?
No.
Okay, thank you. Will a board member move to vote on the request and continuing variance to allow the department to open all non-privileged correspondence through a vendor from an off-site location to scan the correspondence and forward it to an incarcerated recipient's tablet? I'm asking for a move for a vote. Is there any?
Bless me, Lord.
Online, is there a move for the vote? Now, you should note, no action on the vote. And Melissa, I'll confer with you. If there is no action on a motion or a variance request,
Chairman.
yeah.
So
So technically, it will not pass, I'm advised. Okay. So therefore, if there's no motion, we'll move forward and the resolution does not pass.
can I ask the question just for clarity?
Yes, Board Member Huss.
So you're saying if it's not put up for a vote, it doesn't pass, but for the record, if we oppose it and actually have it sealed in the record that this board has opposed to it, what is the difference?
That was the option of the board, to go on record to accept it or not accept it. There was no motion, so it did not move forward and it did not pass.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure what was the versus of having a vote of opposing it on the record versus no record, a record of it not moving.
And for those of us who are new to the board, it's good to understand the distinction. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we'll take a presentation on the package variance requests. We will now hear from the department who will be giving a presentation on that package variance request.
Yeah, so I've discussed it in conjunction with my initial presentation. It's the same reasons why we wanted to have the scanning of mail. The packages we want to be able to come from specific vendors, directly from those vendors to us. So I don't have anything further to say on that than I think, unless the board has questions, but I think it was commingled with the issue around the scanning of mail.
I understand, and we just had to, for technical reasons, separate your presentations for both various requests.
Got it.
And so, but we know that most of the comments entailed both, and your responses entailed both.
Got it.
So, but I will ask any board members have any questions on the package variance.
I do. Thank you, Commissioner. I totally get the difference between package and mails.
Yeah.
Again, this is the only system where family members literally drop off clothes and have the ability to soak those clothes in different things. So I guess, again, with the selected ability of packages, does that include underwear, T-shirts, and those type of things? Or are we talking simply books and things that specifically have to come from Amazon?
Yeah, that's a good question. It would include that. So instead of, I'll use an example, it's not my preference if one went to like a Walmart and purchased undergarments and then mailed it at their own. What we're asking is that they purchase it from Walmart and have Walmart deliver it. They could also use the commissary vendor if one wanted to choose that option. I guess it would basically be based on what is the most cost-effective solution for the family member that's enduring the cost of sending a package.
Okay. And would the packages have to be sent, or could they buy new things and actually deliver them and have them actually sealed in packages? I'm just asking because a lot of times.
Yeah. So it would all be sent via the mail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from board members online or in person?
I just wanted to confirm something that was in our preparatory materials. I think I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's no paupers provision, right? In other words, if a family can't afford to buy something through one of the preferred vendors, they have no recourse to send anything. The department's not in any way making things more affordable to folks who can't afford them.
No, but we do provide for those that are indigent in our system, a number of items for them to have at no cost to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any additional questions from the board? At this time, will a board member move to vote on the requesting continuing variance to allow the department to require that the contents of any incoming package be purchased from and mailed to the facility by a company whose ordinary business includes the sale and shipping of such items? Is there a motion from the board? Final request, is there a motion from the board? There being none, this action is not taken and the variance has failed. We have asked the DOC Commission to provide updates on the following topics: drugs and contraband reduction, violence reduction, and tablet reduction. Commissioner, please start with your update on drugs and contraband reduction.
Sure, thank you. And some of this I've mentioned in our dialogue regarding the scanning of mail and packages, but for the record of the agenda, I'll go through some repetitiveness again. On January 18th was the first time that we started vehicle check operations in the department. For that initial vehicle check operation, we partnered with the New York City Sheriff and the New York City Police Department to do this unannounced checkpoint of vehicle checks. The reason we partnered with those other law enforcement agencies, because at that time, we did not have canines that were imprinted with fentanyl capability. And we wanted to ensure that not only the common contraband narcotics that may come into a jail system would be able to be detected, but also fentanyl. But since then, we've continued to do vehicle check operations, not only on Rikers Island, but at the Vernon C. Bain Center. And those checkpoints are led by our investigations division. As I mentioned earlier, related to body scanning, the department began body scanning at the Robert and Davern Center, also known as RNDC. That started yesterday, March 13th. This is part of the department's multi-pronged strategy to mitigate against the flow of contraband coming into the jails. DOC, uniform and non-uniform staff, health providers, volunteers, contract providers, anyone entering a jail facility will be body scanned coming into that facility. There will be no exceptions. They'll be required, if randomly selected, to go through the body scanning. It's our goal to increase canine presence within each facility to deter violence, provide support to the facility, to staff during searches, and to detect contraband drugs. The K-9 unit consists of 4 captains currently, 33 correction officers, and we have 36 various types of canines available to us. The canines are well-versed and imprinted with being able to detect heroin, cocaine, crack, hashish, marijuana, methamphetamines, Suboxone, ecstasy, and their derivatives. And we currently now, through our partnership with the Customs and Border Protection Agency, now have 8 canines that have been recently trained to detect fentanyl. Like I said, this was conducted in partnership with the Customs and Border Protection, and it was an excellent opportunity for the department to increase its ability to detect dangerous contraband entering DOC facilities. We also, I want to mention, increased our number of staff that have been trained to use Narcan, as we've increased the availability of Narcan throughout our facilities to include our courts. We have over 4,000 uniformed staff assigned to the facilities that have undergone Narcan training, and that represents about 72% of the uniform workforce facilities. I'll provide some data where we are between July and the end of January this year of the increases of contraband interdiction. Our drug discoveries during visits have increased 128%. Our weapon discoveries during visits have increased 60%. We have drug discoveries in mail overall have increased during that time frame almost 70%. And weapon discoveries, that's one area where it's down. Our weapon discoveries are down 65% because if someone says mail, it's just easier to detect if it's a metal object that may be a weapon coming in through the mail. As of January 31st, our tactical search operations have recovered, and this is just tactical search operations alone, 1,081 weapons department-wide in fiscal year 23. When we look at July 1st of last year to January this year, it's the highest number of tactical search operations were conducted at the GRVC, the George R. Vero Center, and we had 32 tactical search operations there. The highest number of weapons that have been recovered from GRVC during that time period was 588. AMKC had 19 tactical search operations, recovering 302 weapons, and RNDC had 11 searches, recovering 53 weapons were recovered during that time frame. We have recovered 2,578 weapons department-wide as a result of tactical search operations and other facility search operations combined. I know we've talked about contraband narcotics in detail as it relates to mail and packages. Not sure if anybody has any questions specific to that agenda item. I can move on to violence indicators.
Yes, please, Commissioner, move on to violence. And when you conclude, if there's question by board members.
Okay,
we'll go.
got it. Fiscal year to date, that's almost 9 months in the fiscal year that we're in now, we have decreased slashings and stabbings by 14.4%. February of 23, last month, we show a huge decrease of 30% in February of 2023 versus February 2022. I'd like to also point out that February was also the lowest number of incidences that we had with slashings and stabbings, going all the way back to January of 2021. Month to date, we have a 57 decrease department-wide in slashings and stabbings. Assaults on staff fiscal year to date are down 42%, and use of force involving assaults on staff are also down 21%. Don't know if anybody has specific questions about the slashing violence data.
We'll allow you to proceed, Commissioner, and upon your conclusion of update on the tablet distribution in the
tablets,
jails, we'll allow for questions.
Got it. Just give me a moment. Yeah, thank you. So we have distributed 4,941 tablets to individuals. There are some individuals that have refused to take a tablet for whatever reason. They don't appreciate the amenities of the tablet for whatever reason. We've tried to engage with those individuals to try to convince them and provide some support for them to want to use the tablets. We have a programming team that is going around. So if anyone doesn't get a tablet when the program team is there, the program team follows up to make sure that person is given an individual tablet. As you know, the tablet capability does allow for telephone calls. We give 21 minutes of free call every 3 hours. So now those calls for persons in custody that are living in cells can happen in the privacy of their cell as well. And the only individuals that do not get tablets immediately is those that are in our new admission housing or maybe in our new admission intake. But once a person is issued a tablet, that tablet stays with that individual. Even if they move from one facility to another, the tablet stays with them. We allow the person in custody to manage. When the tablet gets charged, they can bring it to the A station and we would charge it for them. They don't bring their tablets to court. So sometimes we do encourage individual in custody, if they don't want to leave the tablet locked in their cell, then they can leave it in the A station while they're at court so that it can recharge.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I'll allow board members in person and online to ask questions regarding the 3 items presented by the Commissioner and the Department: drugs and contraband reduction, violence reduction, and tablet distribution. Board Member Dr. Cohen.
Dr. Cohen, I'm sorry, can I just ask you to turn on your microphone? Thank you.
I said, well, initially, early in your commissionership, you told the board that you were quite supportive of the RMAS system that we designed. And you asked us to, when it became a problem, because the city issued executive orders to not being able to implement RMAS, as did the monitor. Before that, you asked us to support you in making ESH the disciplinary system because it's going to mimic all the important parts of RMAS, and we were not sure at that moment. In July of I think 21, you said that as an example of how you were dealing with ESH, you were taking out the restraint chairs, and you were supportive of the board, RMAS goals. Period. You now tell us that I think you could look at the data slightly differently, but let's assume that you're right in that there is less violence in the facilities, and certainly our staff says that there is in GRVC, for example, a less violence in ESH rather than general population in GRVC. Why did you restart, I'm going to ask more than a question, restraint chairs? The board spent a long time trying to end this torturous process. The board the mayor specifically said we could not, he would not allow the department to implement this process. This is the second time that you've taken advantage of the mayoral executive order to, I'm trying not to characterize it, but clearly I'm disturbed by it. One time you decided not to engage us you were initially going to ask for variance, so you could lock people in more than 7 hours a day, more than 14 hours a day.
It was more than 14, but not, it wasn't 7 hours.
14, and then you withdrew it because you were led to understand that the mayor and you had every 5 days since September of 2020 said that that doesn't count anymore. He had specifically suspended that rule, saying that we guarantee people 14 hours a day. And another element of the RMAS rule was to eliminate restraint chairs by a certain date. And you participated in that. And and now you're telling us that the violence is down, and yet a month ago you reinstituted the restraint chairs. For people who don't know exactly what that means, basically, if you are in a restraint chair unit, which there are 2 or 3 right now, and there may be more, and there are about 50 people in it, maybe more. The only way you can not be shackled the only way you can get out of your cell is to sit in a restraint chair. Except for going to recreation where you're shackled in your arms and legs and brought up into a cage where there's no equipment. And we thought that was a bad idea. Why did you do it?
Sure. So just for the record, you said I said something in July of 2021. I wasn't here in July of 2021, unless you meant July 21st.
It was on the Brian Lehrer show. I'll send you the transcript.
Well, I wasn't on the Brian Lehrer show.
Well, it was, but Matt Katz was the moderator that day.
As the board is aware, we continue to use ESH in response to serious violence in our facilities. We keep the board informed of all ESH placements, and we share review paperwork on a monthly basis. And we currently now have went back to reusing restraint chairs because that's what was recommended as we were going through our process to incorporate not only RMAS, as we were working with not only our classification consultant, but also working with the federal monitor as the judge had ordered, so that he would approve what the policy would be in ESH, which is our restrictive housing, for both level 1 and level 2.
Can I just clarify? So you were working with the monitor and your expert, James Austin?
Yes.
And the 3 of you, along with your staff, decided that the best thing to do is to bring back restraint chairs.
Well, I think you should let me just finish.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know how the decision was made.
Certainly. In the summer of 2022, we implemented the GRVC Violence Reduction Plan and began blending SRG-affiliated housing areas. And we are still contending with heightened levels of individuals that have a high propensity for violence. It was determined that restraint desks are a critical tool in managing a challenging population who is prone to acts of serious violence, such as slashings and stabbings. The desks enable the consistent provision of programming and socialization with peers, also ensuring safety. The restraint desks are being used in ESH level 1 only. When we were going through this process of determining what level of restraint we needed in level 1, my first preference was to use restraint mitts, which is what is used in Cook County, which is in the city of Chicago, which everyone's infatuated with. So that's what I wanted to use. But our expert and the federal monitor had reservations about using restraint mitts for individuals in level 1 when they were electing to come out of cell for their 7 hours. So the alternative that we had was a restraint desk. And when we submitted our ESH restrictive housing plan and policy to the federal monitor, that was what was approved.
I see. You didn't provide us with that plan.
Did you ask for it?
I didn't know that you had done it.
Oh, okay.
And if you could please provide us with it. I think that's all I have to say. I'm sorry that you reversed your position under the pressure of the monitor and or your own decision.
Yes, I wouldn't call it a reversal.
I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, what I would call it is we had 2 sound correctional practice options, and the options that the expert and the federal monitor that they thought were best was the restraint desk.
Yeah, I will just question, I'll finish now and say that restraint desks are not a sound correctional option. They are dangerous, they're medically dangerous, they're torturous, they're humiliating, and I hope you take them down as soon as possible.
Yes, but the problem is, Dr. Cohen, is that death is also a very dangerous thing. And we cannot allow an opportunity for someone, because they want to respond to incidences of conflict with learned violence, to kill another person.
When you told me that you were going to take down ESH1, the restraint chairs, you described a terrific program, I thought. You said you were going to have enough officers in ESH1 that you could actually have this mixed program that you want, that you'd be able to, actually you wouldn't even need it because you'd have enough officers there that you could protect everybody from each other. That seemed like a good idea to me.
It was a good idea with very good intentions, but the reality of the situation is that the individuals in level 1 has such a high propensity for violence. It was putting other persons in custody in danger, as well as staff. So I had to act.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Cohen.
Thank you.
If you can turn off your mic, please. Any other board members have questions for the commissioner on these 3 areas of drugs reduction and contraband reduction, violence reduction, and tablet distribution? Okay, so there being none, we will move to, well, I would like to, thank the commissioner at this time for his presentation and his thoughts. And, thank you for the detailed information.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, we'll have CHS updates. But before CHS begins, you can take the mic. I just want to make a note for the record regarding the variances from our deputy legal counsel. So for the record, that since as no motion to vote on the variance request was made, the record will reflect that no action was taken. Doesn't mean the request fails, just means no action taken. So that is a clarification for the record.
Means that our rules still exist as well, isn't that, Chairman? Is that part of that?
It would establish that the status quo still exists.
The 2 rules that the variance sought to change are still in effect.
That is correct. So please, Doctor.
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Patsy Yang, Senior Vice President for Health and Hospitals for Correctional Health Services. I'm joined here. Beepin Sabeti is our Chief Medical Officer. Carlos Castellanos is our Chief Operations Officer. Nancy Arias is our Chief Nursing Officer. Nicole and Jeanette Merrill head up our communications and external affairs. And on behalf of all of CHS, really condolences to the family of Marvin Pines. I just wanted to, before we get into the updates that you asked for, I just wanted the most recent update that Correctional Health Services has is an update on COVID. Today, I think, is the 3-year anniversary of the first death in New York City. And this coming Friday marks the 3rd anniversary of our first laboratory confirmed positive test of a patient in custody back in 2020. And back, particularly in 2020 in the first wave, the staff in Correctional Health Services and the department continued to show up, did not have the option to stay home during some of the more terrifying times of 2020. And I just want to acknowledge that without the partnership of the department and the heroic work of CHS and the department, that I think the toll, which is still being felt, would have been even more significant than it is. That said,
thank you for that update on COVID, which definitely was a devastating period, and we certainly hope not to see it again. And so, just to clarify, we did ask for you, the board, to update on the following topics.
Right.
overdoses and suspected overdoses trends
Yes.
in RMSC's PACE unit. So if you,
I will do that. I'm going to ask Dr. Sabeti to do that. Let me just quickly, beginning tomorrow, and let me just cut to the chase. We're actually relaxing a lot of our COVID protocols that we put in place from 2020. The data is that the positivity rate is now below 1%. In the jails, the percent of the population in quarantine houses is below 1%. Apart from the Omicron variant back in 21, basically it's been 0 or single digits in positivity. The clinical presentations have not been severe, thankfully, and we continue to vaccinate and offer vaccination. We will continue to offer vaccination and screening to every person who's coming in from the community into the jail system. We will be monitoring them for 5 days. It is a shorter period of time, but we want to make sure that no disease is developing. We will continue to isolate people who are positive for COVID. We are discontinuing routine quarantine, but we may need to do that depending on what the epidemiology shows us at that point in time. We are requiring negative positive results before anybody moves into the infirmary, which is our most vulnerable population. And we will continue to offer all people in custody vaccine and encourage masking. So that's effective tomorrow. That's pretty significant. So thank you.
yes, thank you for that update.
I don't know if Dr. Zabedi, you want to talk about this? Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. I believe we have some slides. So we were asked today to speak about overdoses and suspected overdose trends, as well as RMSC PACE. Before I get into the overdose trends, I just want to take a minute to review what CHS does to address substance use and substance use interventions in the jail system. So first of all, it starts in the beginning with a focus on intake screening and evaluations by nursing and medical. The purpose of these intervention is to recognize and treat withdrawal early, as well as identify individuals for referral for treatment. One of our cornerstones of treatment is our Key Extended Reentry Entry Program, or KEEP. That's the oldest and largest jail-based opioid use treatment program in the country. So we offer methadone and buprenorphine, as well as counseling, and then post-overdose follow-up, as well as release coordination. We also have harm reduction interventions, which include naloxone training for both patients and for those who are leaving jail, the visitor center, as well as post-overdose outreach, as well as education to individuals who are in jail, and then also integrate substance treatment into our general medical and mental health treatment. You can go to the next slide. And just because, again, it is relevant to overdose, speaking about KEEP, we engage about 94% of eligible patients, and about 88% of those who we engage with choose to enroll in our program. So it's highly successful. And currently, we have about 709 patients enrolled in KEEP. Okay. So now we'll go to the trends. First of all, I just want to define a couple things that we're looking at here. When we are tracing overdose or looking at overdose in our setting, we've broadly defined it as individuals where we administered Narcan, usually in the set of emergency, or any references to overdose in our clinical notes. So what you'll see in the black line at the bottom is you'll see an increase. This is the rate per 100, I think, rate per 1,000 for each year. You'll see an increase in the use of Narcan over the course of several years. That's driven by several factors. First of all, education to the individuals who are incarcerated. I think for those of us who work in jails too. So it increased use from the availability of Narcan. You'll see then a fluctuating trend for overdose events, as I spoke about earlier, how that was defined. And then the top number is basically a combination of the both. And so you'll see that there was an increase from 2020 to 2021, and that's since stabilized. Oh, next slide, thanks. So here's just a breakdown of overdose events for 2022, just to see the trends broken down by month most recently. And again, this is looking at overdose, not just Narcan. And you'll see here that it fluctuated somewhat and started to increase in December of 2022. I will note that in January and February, it's began to decrease again. So the increase in 2022 was I think a one-off. So that's it for overdose. Chair, I don't know if you want me to continue going and do questions at the end, or if you'd rather ask questions now.
I'll defer to the members if they have questions now or would like to wait until the presentation is complete. You can proceed.
Okay, great, thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead. So next, I'll talk about our RMSC PACE unit, or our PACE unit in Rosie's. Again, I think it is helpful to have some context before I speak about the unit itself. So I'll first review the levels of care that are available to individuals who are incarcerated with a focus on mental health. So we have the equivalent of outpatient clinics. That's our general population clinic, where individuals are brought to our clinics for treatment, either to see a mental health provider or psychiatric provider. Then we have our therapeutic housing units, which are essentially residential treatment units where individuals who are generally SMI or have mental health issues that impair functioning in GP are housed, and we deliver treatment on site. Then we have, of course, inpatient care at Bellevue for men, and for women, primarily at OMH at the moment. So in terms of the therapeutic impact or benefit of therapeutic housing units, one is that we have the cohorting of our highest risk patients. These are individuals who could be at risk or at risk in general population, and so they are removed from general population. It also allows us to more efficiently deliver services, and in the setting of any type of crisis, kind of help us with resource allocation to ensure that they are being taken care of. We also have enhanced clinical surveillance and care coordination. I would say just enhanced surveillance. This includes through increased correction staffing as well as CHS staffing who work together with the patients. So there are steady staff, consistent staff, and that allows us both to help encourage compliance with treatment, but also identify individuals early who may be decompensating for referrals out. And then we also increased our treatment interventions in those areas too. So that primarily takes the form of increased visits with individuals as well as groups. So I'll speak specifically about Rosie's PACE. So it opened in March of 2017. Currently, we have the same leadership team in mental health overseeing general population, mental observation, and PACE. There's, again, I should clarify that there's two levels of therapeutic housing units, if you're not aware, MO and PACE, PACE being our highest. So the same team oversees all the individuals in that care, and that really helps us ensure that people are in the right setting. It's a cell setting, and the max capacity is 28, and the census varies, but currently is 25. And then in terms of the PACE model, we adhere to that on the Rosie PACE unit. So there's daily patient contact. We have staff there on the unit 16 hours a day, delivering services on the unit with offices on the unit. We have individual and group treatment, and then steady clinical staff that provide continuity of care. So I think this is for the next presentation, so I can happy to answer any questions that the board may have about overdose or Rosie's.
Thank you. I do. This is a concern that came up with the PACE unit, was that the clinical staff, even when individual behavior, it's a behavior modification program, right? So when the behavior is displayed, the clinical staff is making a decision to remove the person and determine the amount of time that they're to be separated. Am I correct?
So the clinical staff, generally, we can place individuals on behavior plans. We do that on a limited basis, and we do that, we communicate that to staff. So if there is, let's say, an emergency that's related to violence, then we would coordinate the response to the Department of Correction to make sure that the individual and the individuals on the unit are safe.
Okay, so I totally get the de-escalation and an emergency. I was under the impression that clinical staff was making a decision to have a person segregated in some way if they're not compliant in some kind of way with the program?
No.
So that's totally separate. It still is in the hands of the Department of Corrections to make that determination?
Correct.
Okay.
Outside of a behavioral plan, correct, which is
Okay. Tell me more about the behavior plan then, because it kind of feels like, but.
Yeah, so in rare instances, and again, when we do have any individual on a behavioral plan that's communicated to the board, that's across our male and female PACE units. So there are instances where someone may, be engaging in violent behavior. It may not be due to mental illness, or we refer to the hospital, and the hospital, generally they refer to the hospital first, and the hospital determines that they don't meet criteria for inpatient hospitalization. We then will work with the Department of Corrections to come up with a behavioral plan to incentivize, positive behavior and to move the patient kind of, into the milieu.
And the only reason I was asking, because I know sometimes when medical and mental health does things that actually results in it looking as if the Department of Correction is implementing it, but they're not having any control in that determinant of the person being segregated or in a punitive manner, when treatment should be seen as a helpful resource. And that was my confusion on the call when PACE was being explained. It felt as if the officers didn't have the control over safety and security of the facility, that the mental health staff was making the decisions about that unit specifically.
No, it's with the, in coordination with the Department of Corrections, but Corrections has that control.
Dr. Cohen, are you finished, first board member Hoskins?
Not interesting. The New England Journal of Medicine this week had an article called, I think, time for not preventive care, time for harm reduction, national harm reduction strategy for opiates. And there was one element in it that could not be used on Rikers Island and on the boat, which is to provide people who use narcotics with Narcan, not to have it to get the, and to train them to use it and to do it. I'm going to just ask you another question at the same time, and it's really not exactly related, but I know that you had, I thought that you were trying to enroll people in methadone or buprenorphine programs who were not already in those programs. Could you describe that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we focus on early identification and treatment, but of course, people may not disclose substance use when they first come in. So we have ensured that there's referral pathways throughout the course of incarceration. That includes individuals contacting us directly, family members contacting us, and of course, CHS referring within CHS for entry into our KEEP program.
That's great. Thank you.
Online board members, any questions? I have one question.
Sure.
If I may. Just in your opinion or facts, do you find that there might be a disparity from the PACE unit as far as getting treatment and not being, lockouts versus other similar units that on Rikers Island?
Could you just clarify the question for me? I'm sorry.
Okay. To clarify, my findings when visiting Rosie's, the women are locked in on much longer basis. And my understanding is that the medical treatment is delayed, and that the lock-ins are based on violence and other interactions, and not getting medication might cause them to be further locked in. This is my analysis based on one visit, so I'd like for your interpretation of what that means.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the clinical team does not direct for individuals to be locked in. So, I can't speak to when you were there, what you saw and the prevalence of it, but it's not part of that clinical or PACE program for individuals to be locked in for not taking medication or for other reasons.
Sure. Go ahead,
Dr. Spetti, when people are locked in by the Department of Correction, how does that impact their access to therapeutic interventions on the PACE unit?
Yeah, so, There's many factors or reasons why someone could be locked in. I defer to the department to comment on that. But if there's a security issue on the unit, again, our staff are on site and can check in with patients. That's the whole point of having staff on site. So they do, connect with patients, check in with them. If there's any acute issue, then can have the individual removed and assessed.
Just to follow up on that, I think I was on site at that location on 2 occasions. I don't recall your staff on site.
So I would say if that happens, to please escalate to us. I mean, they are on site in offices on the unit, and we have treatment aides where they're supposed to be there 16 hours a day. So if that does come up, please escalate to us so we can follow up. But that is the expectation.
Well, thank you. And now at this time, we have asked DOC and CHS to provide a joint update on access to medical. So Commissioner, if you can join. Thank you. That's why.
Good afternoon again. So I'll just, first I'd like to introduce, we have a new Deputy Commissioner of Health Affairs, Dr. James Saunders. He's here in the audience today. Brings 3 decades of experience in just health-related work. So I think it's a great addition to the team. So just wanted to let the board know that position was vacant for some time as we were trying to find the right candidate. And when we met James Saunders, we think he's going to bring significant value to us being able to enhance our partnership with correctional health services and enhance the delivery of health services to our shared clients. I'll also point out in consultation with Tim Belovich and in collaboration with Correctional Health Services, the department has strengthened the in-custody death joint action review process. Based upon Mr. Belovich's guidance, the department's adaptation, the department now conducts an executive level JAR of any in-custody death 48 hours, 2 days after the event. The goal of the 2-day executive level review is to conduct an initial review of an incarcerated person's death, to share immediate findings, and to review the circumstances surrounding the death. Any issue identified that requires immediate corrective action or preventative action is then taken. The initial JAR is then followed up with a 7-day and a 30-day executive level review. These meetings allow additional facts to be shared and any additional deficiencies to be addressed. These meetings are conducted pursuant to a request from and in the presence of an attorney from the New York City Law Department to ensure attorney-client privilege is created and maintained, as these deaths are also investigated by other oversight law enforcement bodies like the State Attorney General and this body as well. The department, just also add, is committed to ensuring that everyone in custody has access to quality medical care. Non-production of clinical appointments vary from month to month, and the department publishes a public report detailing the number of missed appointments and the reasons why. The individuals in custody have a right to refuse treatment and appointments. However, DOC staff works with the population to encourage clinical appointment attendance. DOC staff and CHS work together to ensure priority cases are seen in the clinic. Often individuals who miss an appointment for lack of an escort have their appointment rescheduled for the next day or sooner thereafter. DOC has implemented the following measures to address missed medical appointments. Facility operations revived and revamped the daily huddles with CHS clinical staff to improve production. The DOC's Legal Division and Health Affairs Division instituted daily, now twice weekly, telephone calls with senior leadership at the facilities to identify impediments to production and possible improvements. CHS developed a process to schedule groups of patients at AMKC by service and block times to allow for efficient and staff deployment. DOC introduced the use of passes to allow minimum security detainees to travel to clinics unescorted. This is happening at Rosie's as well as AMKC. DOC is now sharing court production lists with the correctional health staff so that an individual with a court appearance can be seen in the clinic prior to court if necessary. Lastly, DOC facility staff made changes in its record keeping so that the reason an appointment was missed was accurately recorded, and Health Affairs trained staff on the new coding. Currently, today, when we think about the last second half of calendar year 2022, less than 1% of scheduled medical appointments were missed due to there being no staff to escort that individual. There were 299,703 scheduled appointments from July to December. This comes to an average of about almost just under 50,000 scheduled appointments per month for an average daily population of about 5,700 individuals during that time. So I'll let CHS if they have anything else to add to that, or you're fine. I don't know if the board has questions.
Yeah, Dr. Butler.
I'm thrilled to hear about the minimum security passes for people to be able to move on their own. How's that going?
So far, it's been going well. I mean, we're talking about individuals that don't have a propensity for violence, minimum security levels. So it's been going well. There hasn't been any events that have been brought to my attention to give me reservation not to do it. If anything, I'm hopes as we continue to stabilize the department that we'd have the ability to expand that. So that's what we're doing now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Cohen.
I just want to commend both departments on this process. I think it's going in the right direction, and I hope it continues.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the commissioner or CHS?
Okay, if no other questions from board members online, then we'll move to the general public comment section. So today, first, we're going to hear from people in custody who want to participate in the meeting in their own words. Board staff have implemented captioning technology to enhance the listener experience and ensure testimony from people in custody is accessible to all attendees. Closed captioning is being provided solely for the convenience of our viewers. The accuracy of machine-generated captions varies depending on audio quality and the cadence of the speaker. The Board of Correction does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the closed caption. We will play the statements from people in custody first and then turn to the public comments. Technology to be able to play the public comments of the people in custody.
It's anonymous. I would like to say about our mail that's going on. The mail, I would say that please do not take that from us because everybody needs to physically see their mail. They delete stuff off our tablets, so that's not, I don't know how to say it. It's not right to take our physical mail from us because the Department of Corrections is always not correct.
Hello, my name is Kiki. I'm a lawyer. My booking case number is 541-2200641.
I was assaulted last night by a transgender, and I wish for someone to come up in here and investigate the situation. This has been an ongoing situation in Rosenfinger, and to know if I will have any one of them any one of y'all have paid any attention to the woman. We're crying out for help because we're being assaulted by men that are playing like they're women, and they're really not women. They're in here talking us, and everything else. So someone please investigate this matter. Thank you very much.
I arrived at Rikers Island. I was admitted on December 20th, 2020. Sorry, 2022. And after doing the medical, refused the medical blood work because I saw the rat running and down behind the cylinders at the bathroom and had a lot of mice and stuff by the doctor's area. I refused the medical, the blood work. I did all the rest of the medical, but I refused the blood work. Myself. That apparently made me squat and do all those unnecessary stuff. I told him I had no drugs. I told him I wasn't like correctly. So he told me that I still have to search and all the questions and other unnecessary stuff. But besides that, I was placed in West Facility. Other suicide watch. I really wanted to know why I went to that 311 and made a really I finally got my medical record and why I opened the suicide watch. Now at the event of the suicide watch, no one, I mean like social services, medical, that, the law library. No one gave me any information why I was being held in those conditions. On suicide watch and early, I'm not suicidal. My name is Karen Davidson. My second case number is 113-323-0008.9. And now that I'm trying to find my property, no one sees where my property belongs. I'm really concerned about this because I have my computer, like personal and private stuff on my computer. And I'm hoping that my computer is proof that I was stripped of. It's being inclined to me by the previous department.
Hi, my name is Ginger, Jinja. My name is Johnson. I'm known as, my AKA is King, KYNG, Pariah, PARIA. So listen, I've been in custody since 1/31/2022. My experience before that, and being in custody has been nothing but sexual harassment. Now we know that officers are arresting females and making up shit all the time, especially if you don't wind up dead in custody. And it's out of attraction. So since I've been in custody, I've been being sexually harassed, right, by male officers and female inmates, right? And it's very inappropriate. Some female officers as well, but it's rare. You know what I'm saying? Just know how to keep it professional. You understand? Anyway, so these dudes, they can lock us in the shower, all that, right? And y'all don't arrest them, y'all don't do shit to them. And then you hit me with Priya hits me with it's our facility needs that they can keep coming around even if there's an order of separation, right? All right, so kick this shit, right? You basically condoning the shit they did, right? Now watch this. Just the other day, I just seen an inmate get arrested, re-arrested, for slapping a officer's ass. They came up here with the swift quickness, no Taylor. You understand what I'm saying? But when one of us allegates the truth about one of these niggas, and you know how many times these niggas keep saying I'm lying? At the same time, my name means something to me. My reputation means something to me. I never had to lie to kick it, right? And because I'm fairly popular on the outside world, right? And people be stalking me, I feel some type of way, right? I haven't been provided recreation. Last year, out of the 364 days, I went 7 times, less than an hour each time. That is less than a work shift. That's ridiculous. But I can look across in the mid-jar and see them go to recreation every day, every other day. But I can't get any antioxidants to my brain. So it looks like you're kidnapping people, throwing them in here with false crimes, lying on them, and creating, mind you, I'm a police brutality victim. I keep providing tomorrow on the 10th of this year that this first initiation of NYPD charge shooting me in a skate park, profiling me as a black male, right? Then cover it up, they tried to say I was a trans. I'm not transitioning nothing. I haven't ever. I'm a female. My mother birthed a woman. I'm just a lesbian. But and then you hear dudes having inappropriate conversations. Oh, she's cute. I'm mad as hell. She's a lesbian. Oh, so you gonna watch me in the shower? You gonna keep antagonizing me? You got CEOs lining people up like myself to be in fights and shit like that. You gonna keep lining me to make me look like something I'm not on paperwork? But you know you was responsible for the shit?
My name is Paul Alexander. I'm an inmate on Rikers Island, and my booking in case number is 241-200-2165. I have a few new issues. They don't have anything to drink in the yard. The weather's getting warmer. They used to always have a cooler or a candle filled with water. And they'd only have to fill it up once a month and it would last a whole month. But they have a new captain working this yard and she refuses to put any water in the yard. The 9 months that I've been here, they would always have the cooler filled with water in the yard. But this past week, they refused to put it in there. You know, they just so lazy. They don't even want to like walk over there to get it. Also, the mail only gets delivered maybe 2 times or 3 times a week when it should be delivered 5 or 6. Last week, the mailbox was so full, I couldn't even fit any more mail in. We didn't get any mail on the weekends usually, and then we didn't get any mail on Monday, Tuesday, and now Wednesday. So for 5 days straight, there's been no mail. They keep claiming they don't have enough guards to do the mail, and but they do. Who's ever doing the schedule here, whatever deputy superintendent or captain, they put 3 COs, 3 guards in the control room, they put 3 guards in the office, they put 3 guards in the hallway. You know, rather than doubling and tripling up the guards, they can take one of these guards to work deliver the mail. And it goes with the same thing with the law library. There was no law library at all on January 7th and February 7th and February 8th. And there were about 10 days in January had no law library. Again, they claimed that they had no guard to work the law library. But what they do is they're doubling and tripling up the same COs in the same areas. The COs who usually work the law library, they had pulled from the law library so they could put 3 COs in hallway right here. You know, it doesn't make sense. You wouldn't want it to work the law library. That's where she usually works. But instead, they down the law library, they pull it out of there, and they ship them up the COs. They had 3 COs. She was one of the 3 COs sitting in the hallway, 3 of them in the same area. So whoever's doing the schedule, you know, doesn't want to really care about the law library, doesn't care about the yard. They skip out a lot too. They doesn't care about the mail, and they'd rather chip them up. They'd rather have 3 COs sitting in the control room, or 3 COs sitting in the office. And, you know, these are, you know, positions that are important to the inmates, and there's a lot of stress and grief over that. So they can fix that, you know, maybe have somebody else do the scheduling here. Also, lastly, I was sexually abused by Captain Scoma, Scoma. He threatened me, and he forced me to undress
Yes, my name is Christopher Chano, and my booking case number is 895-2200-296. They are abusing court order lockdown. I'm in GRVC housing unit 1A. And I've been here for 5 days now from the record facility. This date is the 20th of January 2023. They have not given me recreation in 5 days. I'm in the cell 23 hours of the day. Court out there. I'm only allowed to go out of the condition, and they have not given it to me. Or they haven't given it to Alexander Williams. He's in 11th cell. They haven't given it to Queen Company. He's in 4th cell. And they haven't given it to Torres. Now, in the box, 23 hours with no recreation. Also, since we've been here and court on lockdown, there's a law called the Health Act. I'm a first juror. I got mental illness. There's a law, HALT. And that said, there's no more punitive segregation in legal states. You have to be out the box, out the chart, 7 hours out the day. Mental health, mental sanity. They do not allow this. I'm breaking the law. And also breaking my experience with many times. Please, help me. I'm down in there. Mike is out in GRBT.
The caller has hung up.
We want to thank all of the people in custody who left comments on our recorded line. And Chair Sampson has created a space for CHS and DOC staff to also make comments. Today, no staff has signed up, but just announcing that space is there. So now I'm going to move on to the first 3 people who signed up in person. And the first person is Keisha Williams.
Hello, everyone. I will be giving my time to Asaki Antoine.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Asaki Antoine. I'm the 3rd Vice President of the Correctional Officers Benevolent Association. Since January's meeting, 2 more correctional officers have been violently beaten by 2 inmates. These injuries sustained were permanent. 4 more correctional officers, females, were sexually assaulted, bringing that total to 49. One of the female officers, whose buttocks was slapped, shared with me that the incident was traumatic for her. She shared with me that sharing the incident with her wife was traumatic. In NYC, the inmates are using the food slot attached to their cells to place their penis on, as female officers afford them their institutional meals. We are grandmothers, mothers, wives, sisters, employed by the city of New York, a city that continues to neglect and overlook sexual assaults and sexual harassment on light and dark skin tones. On January 11th at 6 a.m., I received a phone call. The call on the other line, frantically, Miss A, you have to get to the hospital. I arrived at the hospital and saw my fellow officer's face bandaged. The bandages were removed, and what I saw will replay in my mind forever. The officer's right eye was shut closed with 2 open wounds. On top of his eyelid, the other below, which required 17 stitches with multiple facial fractures. For every surgical stitch implanted to repair the officer's wound, I shed a tear. This vicious assault and many others continue to happen daily. We correctional officers are supposed to arrive home the same way we left. It's disheartening to find out later that the inmate was talking about viciously assaulting another officer. As trained professionals, my fellow officer utilized interpersonal skills to try to talk the inmate out of his plans. Unfortunately, IPC skills wasn't enough. Without warning or provocation, the officer was punched in the face twice while hitting the ground. While on the ground, the inmate kicked the officer in the face. Horrifying to hear and most definitely disturbing to visualize. After this unprovoked and senseless act of violence against this officer and many others that's incarcerated, I asked this board and city council, where should this violent offender be placed? The inmates housed in all facilities are creating still fires inside and outside of their cells. They are utilizing commissary purchase items such as batteries and wires from their headphones to ignite institutional sweaters, sheets, and/or loose papers, creating a health and safety hazard for correctional officers and other inmates housed in the area. The inmates, in fact, are violating their own minimum standards without accountability. Where are the consequences for inmates who violate rules on Rikers Island? There is none. The city charter mandates this board to review grievances brought by staff and make recommendations in key areas. Countless times, COBA, myself, provided recommendations. Not one recommendation from the BLC and the city council benefited correctional officers, civilians, or non-violent inmates. In fact, the slap on the wrist approach has emboldened these violent inmates to sexually prey on our female correction officers, physically assault male officers, bully civilians and medical staff, and disfigure non-violent inmates. The combination of all of the above is a direct effect of the day-to-day operations in the jails, chaos and disorder. In January's meeting, the BOC introduced Women in the Jails. This initiative, in its early stages, was formed to address the increase of sexual assaults and sexual harassment in the jails. I'm asking you all on this board to follow through and do not sit dormant regarding this initiative. Visit every facility, not just the Rose M. Singer Center. Speak to every officer in the housing area, not just the inmates. Get to the root of why this is happening. Get to the root as to why 49 female correction officers had their bodies violated while at work. I implore you to stand true to the goals as to why this oversight committee was formed, which is to make the jail environment safe and more humane for everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm awaiting this initiative, Women in the Jails. It's important. Every day a correctional officers are harassed, especially our females are harassed. Every day they are looked at as sexual prey. Every day. I need your help. We need your help, please. We can do this together. We can. I'm confident, but you guys have to be open, have an open mind, and do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lionel Cumberbatch.
Good afternoon. I'm Lionel Cumberbatch, the Financial Secretary of the Correctional Officers Benevolent Association. What I'd like to say briefly today is that everything that we heard today involved a correction officer. It's not going to go forward without a correction officer. And to this day, still, it has not ceased, it has not slowed down. The PACE program, the weapon we have, it's all based on staffing. If we don't have enough staff, nothing will go forward. With that said, when I left Rikers Island this morning, it was 5,887 incarcerated. 5,163 were on Rikers Island. 724 were in the boroughs. 80% of that number that we talked about today, that you brought up earlier, are remanded to Rikers Island, meaning that they're going to have to stay on Rikers Island until the outcome of their case. That has to do with staffing. Staffing is our bottom line, and that's why I'm here. I need to bring attention to everything that we look at going forward, whether it be decarceration, however you feel, it's based on staffing, and it will not go forward if someone is working in addition 20 hours a day for the last 3 years. On top of that, the rest that he gets in between towards this correction officer, he has to pay out of his own time. So in 3 years, if you don't have the maximum amount of time in order to get allotted vacation, you won't have any vacation at all because you would have used your time in order to get rest in between these tours. Remember the correction officer on every decision you make. That's all I'm asking today. My time is up today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now go to our online speakers. The first online person is Kayla Simpson.
Hi, can you hear me? I see that the online board members can hear me. Not sure about the feed from the room.
We can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kayla Simpson. I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project, and a genuine welcome and congratulations to new board members and the interim executive director. Very glad to have you. Look forward to working with you. And as many of you know, we're counsel for the plaintiffs in Nunez and Benjamin, and for the petitioners in Agnew. And we have a hotline for people in the city jails. And I could talk to you for hours about the things that we're seeing in our cases, the things that we're hearing from our clients in custody, things you won't hear from DOC. And I'm grateful for the chance to speak to you. But I have to echo what others have said, which is that as grateful as I am to have one of these coveted spots, there are so many other people who needed space to say things that all of us need to hear. People who have been in an isolated cell, people who have lost children or brothers or sisters to the jails, people with decades of doing this work. And written testimony that people may or may not read when it's submitted is not a substitute for this open forum, which allows for real-time responses to what the agencies are saying here. And we all need to hear that, especially today. And it's flatly wrong that they haven't been allowed to speak. And I encourage the board to reconsider limiting public comment. Second, I want to say that we continue to be in support of the city giving this board the resources it needs to perform meaningful oversight duties. We've said it for years, we'll be behind that request every time because we need you at full strength in the jails. Because we know that if you scratch the surface of nearly any issue, you'll find that things are rarely as they appear. And your excellent staff provide examples. All of last year, DOC claimed they were moving people through intake within 24 hours as required by a Nunez court order. They even produced data publicly into the court to support that. But BOC staff scratched the surface with one audit in June of 2022 and saw that not only was that inaccurate, but that DOC staff appeared to be tampering with the tracking system. If you scratch the surface of medical non-productions, which is the subject of our Agnew case, you'll see how DOC is playing a shell game by giving new names to the reasons they fail to produce people, creating a new category called maximum safe capacity, which is just a bureaucratic term that means they can't figure out how to work within the holding spaces in their clinics. Every large correctional system has to deal with logistical concerns like this, but this one uses it as a justification to fail to meet a basic obligation. And make no mistake, there continue to be 9,000, 10,000 missed medical appointments every single month. And the commissioner today gave you some cherry-picked data about slashings and stabbings and other violence indicators, but just look at their own data dashboard and see for yourself how extraordinarily violence levels of all kinds continue to be against the backdrop of the historical record. So we need you in the jails, and the public needs to hear what you see. I'm gonna say one last word on restraint desks. It is completely outrageous that these are back after what had appeared to be a broad agreement that they were inhumane and that shackling what is most commonly Black and brown men to furniture reflects some of the darkest iconography of this nation's history. So just as with medical non-productions, with mail, this agency cannot use a human staffing solution. And so they reach for what is actually very draconian. All too often in history, the phrase sound correctional practice has been used to cover actions we should never have accepted. This is one of them. If the department can't manage the risk of violence in restrictive housing with humane practices, it shouldn't be in control of them. Other city actors like this board and like city council must respond. That practice has to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kelly Grace Price.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had made the cut. I want to thank the board for not bringing the variance and the rule change to the floor. I think that's only the second time in 9 years that this has happened. Congratulations. I do fear for what is to come as other board members leave or are replaced, but congratulations for now. I wanted actually, speaking to what Kayla just said, I wanted to point out some of Board Chair Sampson's comments about his reasoning for bringing the rule change, restricting the number of BOC meetings each year from 9 to 6. Chair Sampson, you mentioned that you were short board staff and that the staff had to devote the lion's share of its time to preparing for the meetings every month. But I know that the board's budget was doubled last year. I personally went to the city council hearings and I begged Gail Brewer and Carlino Rivera and other council members to increase the board's budget over twofold. I believe that your staff has ballooned over 25 members in the last year alone. So I just find it incredulous that you would use as an excuse that the board is short staffed. For years, the board had half the staff and a third of its support members and was able to, in some years, even hold 10 or 11 meetings. Go back and look in 2015 and 2016. I believe we even had a December meeting. I'm not quite sure how much time I have left, but I would also like to address why we're not talking about the BOC remote video access revocation. Why hasn't that been put on the agenda? That really needs to be addressed. I'd also like, in my final few seconds, to thank former Executive Director Amanda Masters for all the work that she's done on the board. It did not go unnoticed. And if I do have a couple more seconds, I want to ask, please include Close Rosie's in the Women's Initiative. As you know, we've filed reports beginning in 2018 to the board regarding these topics, and we hope that our work will not go unnoticed. I believe that that's all my time. Thank you so much. One last thing, it's really frustrating that you're curbing access to people to present in-person testimony at these meetings. I am one person who over the last 9 years has attended and participated in these meetings. And I know that board members, Cohen and Sherman and those that know me have seen the value of this exercise and this practice to my own personal growth as a formerly incarcerated person. And I certainly hope that you will share with Chair Sampson how important this growth has been and how inimical the participation that access to in-person testimony has been to this growth. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. And our last commenter is Eileen Mayer.
Looks like you're muted.
Come on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Marr. I am a civil rights union leader from Vocal, New York. I am also a woman who was formerly incarcerated, and I spent 420 days on Rikers, and I have been on the receiving end as well of being a loved one who was then detained and then incarcerated. I urge the Board of Corrections to take any and everything that the Department of Corrections, COBA, and Commissioner Molina say with a grain of salt. I speak from experience when I say 99% of the contraband, including fentanyl-saturated narcotics, enter the facilities through officers and staff. I saw it with my own eyes repeatedly. As for the mail and package variants, I want to thank the BOC for not falling for Mr. Molina's science fiction. This morning, it was intimated to me by people who are on the island that nothing has changed or improved. Mr. Molina reports less violence. However, that is simply false. There are less incident reports regarding violence. And when I speak of violence, I am referring to the violence instigated, choreographed, and inflicted on detainees by officers. Solitary confinement is still being used despite New York State banning it 3 years ago. Officers continue to absent themselves en masse from work. Therefore, medical appointments, medication, and medical assisted treatment for addictions are predominantly abandoned. Officers continue to rape and sexually assault detainees on a near daily basis. Detainees fear retaliation by the COs, therefore are forced to deal with these traumas in silence, as well as see their attackers and repeat the attacks daily. Clearly, DOC is incapable of doing their job. It is time to end this century-long human rights disaster that is the New York City Department of Corrections. Expedite the closing of Rikers Island and the boat. Encourage mass releases of nonviolent, pregnant, and ill detainees, as well as alternatives to incarceration and treatment for mental health issues. Please hold DOC and its commissioners and union accountable for their blatant disregard of human life, refusal to abide by any moral code of conduct, and continuous fabrication and just lies. Every month I get up here and I say the same thing, and I'll keep saying it, even if it means saying it every day if I have to, until all of the problems are eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you, and that ends our public comment section.
Well, that also brings to the end our public meeting. If I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion moved in second to adjourn. All in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? Here, no objections. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who attended and participated in today's meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled to take place on May 16th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Thank you.